I would like to call the Monday, September 12th, Board of Zoning Adjustments meeting to order. We will begin with roll call. Candace Forrest is absent. Todd James,
He's present.
Tamara Eggins,
Present.
Jose Alvarez,
Present.
Jamie Ramiro Diaz,
Present.
and Alfonso Gonzalez,
Present.
Matt Rufo.
Present.
At this time, would the board make a motion to adopt the minutes from the August 1st meeting?
Move to approve or adopt.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second to adopt the minutes from last month's meeting. Are we voting screens or you want to vote on verbal?
Who seconded?
Rufo was the motion, second was Gonzalez.
Okay. Yeah.
Still waiting to vote. All right, it's showing that that motion had passed on screen. All right. It's still not showing it on my screen right now.
Here, you wanna just use mine? Just use my paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine wasn't working and neither was Myron's. Sign up. Wait, what? All right, let's try. Motion and a second on the floor. Go ahead and vote your screens. And that motion is passed.
All right, thank you. As a reminder to applicants, action that the board takes today will be released in the form of a disposition notice by September 22nd and sent via email and mail to the applicant, as well as posted on the One Step app for other interested parties. Requests that the board votes to approve must show compliance with any noted provisos before the case is finalized and granted final approval. Would the board consider taking item number 12, a rehearing request for 3316 through 3322 Delatrace Street out of order.
All right, we have a request to take number 12 out of order. Will we do that before the decision appeals?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody want to make that motion?
I move to take first item 12, docket number BZA 052-22.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner to take BZA docket number 052-22, item number 12 out of order. Please vote your screens. Okay, that motion is passed.
All right, thank you. We will now begin with new business for a variance rehearing. Will the chair please, the vice chair, please read the hearing rules for variances?
Thank you. Rules and procedures for public hearing for the variance requests. The following procedures shall be observed during the hearing. Each speaker shall give their name and address prior to speaking on the proposal. The applicant or representative will speak first. The presentation shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes for each applicant or representative speaker. But in no event shall the cumulative presentation time by applicants or the representatives exceed 10 minutes. Proponents, persons in favor of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 2 minutes per speaker. Opponents or persons in opposition to this proposal shall speak next and be allowed 2 minutes per speaker. The applicant or representative will be allowed to rebut. The rebuttal shall be limited to a cumulative maximum of 3 minutes. Additional information: for any exceptional case, the time limitations may be extended by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. As the board deems necessary, the case may be acted upon at this meeting or deferred for additional information or review. If the case is deferred, it will be acted upon at the subsequent meeting as provided by law. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including recognition of speakers, relevance of argument, and absolute prohibition of applause or demonstration. Standard of review. The Board of Zoning Adjustments shall not authorize a variance from requirements of the comprehensive zoning ordinance unless it finds, based upon the evidence presented to it, that each case has satisfied the 9 criteria as listed in Article 4, Section 4.6.f of the comprehensive zoning ordinance.
Thank you. BZA docket 052-22 relative to the property at 3316 through 3322 Delatrace Street was a request for a variance from the provisions of Article 11, Section 11.3.a.1, Table 11.2a to permit the debulking of a parcel resulting in insufficient interior side yard setback. This matter was approved by the board at the August meeting. However, due to an error in the staff report, which referenced an incorrect waiver for the amount of the interior side yard setback request, this matter must be reconsidered. The previous report indicated a waiver request of 5/8 inch. The correct dimension for the requested interior side yard setback waiver should be 9 5/8 inches or 0.0802 feet. As such, the applicant's requesting a rehearing from the board to consider a waiver of this amount. The staff continues to recommend approval of the requested variance. subject to 5 provisos.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present for this application? Okay, is anyone here to speak in support of BZA docket number 052-22? Okay, and you guys have communicated with this? Yeah, if you're asking a question, I can't hear you from the 052-22, item number 12. It's hard for me to hear you from back there, so you got to come to the mic.
Is that about a wall on Delashay and about there?
Delachase and Prier?
Johnson.
Yes.
Okay.
You're here to speak in support or in opposition?
I heard to speak in support for Verona Davison, my mother.
Okay. You proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Okay.
And what's your name and address for the
My
record?
name is
Sorry.
Dan Davison.
Thank you.
I'm a son of Verona Davison. She was not able to be here. She can't get up at this time. She's 101 years old. She can't do nothing for herself.
Understandable. And what's your address?
My address is 7040 Manchester Street, New Orleans, 70126.
Okay.
Okay. I got this thing about this wall. To me, the wall been broke down for the last year on my house. No one come to see about it. It been being cleaned. Someone go there and cut the grass every month. Every month, someone go there and cut the grass. So I know he sees it. Okay. When it get to the 11th month, then I had the wall broke down because it was ruining my house. And I know, to me, it looked like the house belonged to him or whoever that sent me this. Because if someone was there cleaning the lot, he had to see that the wall was broken down and was resting on top of the house. Nobody paid no attention until I had the wall thrown down because the bush was growing up. My mother couldn't see out the window. And I think it was long enough for somebody to do something about it. You know.
Okay.
And I had the wall thrown down. And if anyone would go there, they would see where the wall was broken down from during the Hurricane Ida. It's right there. I know, bash it up. You could see all the trash behind my house. No work was done on my house. And we had the house 40-something years. You know, I had no problem to break your fence down because we always could get behind on the side of our house. But when nobody take action for the year, yes, I move and take action with the wall.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on what we're actually discussing right now. You received the comment, you received the card regarding the hearing for this
Yes.
project, for this property, right?
Yes.
So your comments pertinent to the 3316 Delachary Street property? Or are you referring to another property that's adjacent to it?
No, well, this is the property that they sent to me that concerned 3717 South Johnson Street.
Okay, I think what this may be, he may have received a notice he may have received a notice for being within the boundary. So maybe what I'm gonna suggest, if you talk to one of the staff members on the sideboard, they could help give you some clarity about what was the nature of why you received that card, okay?
Which someone over here?
She's over there. If you talk to Valerie, she'll be able to help to give you some guidance on what's.
Thank you.
No problem.
This is it.
It's it, yeah. But I'm thinking that he may have misinterpreted why he received the notice.
Your address?
This
Is
is
this
my
your
mother's address.
This is your mother's address?
Yes, my mother can't be here. My mother's 101 years old. She can't get up.
So you're
She's not
talking about
moving
the
like
part of the
Of the house, the property that broke down, that's what they called me here about. It fell on top of the house.
Okay, so what?
You know, nobody did anything
Yeah.
about it for a whole year.
Okay,
And it was being cleaned every month. You know, so whosoever you sent to work there, they had to see that the wall was on top of the house.
So one of the provisos on that, in that report references receiving, they need to obtain a permit because the house was, a part of the house was demolished
Mhm.
prior to them receive, they didn't get the permit and prior to this variance, the debulking variance to add the other lot, because you're trying to debulk the property, correct?
Yeah, yes. No, there is no house on that property.
Right. That's a
Correct.
On
vacant lot.
Delashay.
correct.
But there was a concrete wall against it and it fell on my house. And that's where I had to walk to get in the back, but it stayed there for almost a year. No one
Okay.
come to do anything about it. Y'all having the place was clean every month. But no one show up to do anything about the wall.
Oh, the wall that's behind the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, does that conclude your comments for the,
That's what I have a comment on it. you
Okay.
know.
thank you. Anyone else here to speak in support of BZA docket number 052-22? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this request? Okay, hearing none. Any questions from the board, or what's the pleasure of the board?
Motions ready to go. See here. In regards to docket BZA 052-22, move for approval of the request of Article 11, Section 11.3.A.1. Following the staff's recommendation that applicant has met the 9 criteria. And I'd like to attach the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noted provisos.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gonzalez, second by Commissioner Rufo, to accept the staff's recommendation for BZA docket number 052-22, granting the waiver as requested for Article 11, Section 11.3.A.1, Table 11-2A for interior side yard, and move for approval with the 5 noted provisos. Please vote your screens. And that motion is passed.
All right, thank you. We will now begin with unfinished business for safety and permits decision appeals. Will the vice chair please read the hearing rules for decision appeals?
Rules and procedures for the appeals of the decisions of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits. The following procedures shall be observed during an appeal hearing. Each speaker shall give their name and address prior to speaking on the proposal. The representative of the Department of Safety and Permits shall present to the board the decision which is under appeal, the relevant code sections related to the appeal, and any information explaining the department's decision. The applicant or representative will speak next. The presentation shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each applicant or representative speaker, but in no event shall the cumulative presentation total by the applicant or their representatives exceed 15 minutes. Proponents or persons in favor of this proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker. Opponents or persons in opposition to the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker as well. The applicant or representative will be allowed a rebuttal. The rebuttal shall be limited to a cumulative maximum of 5 minutes. Additional information. For any exceptional case, the time limitations may be extended by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. As the board deems necessary, the case may be acted upon at the meeting or deferred for additional information or review. If the case is deferred, it will be acted upon at a subsequent meeting as provided by law. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including recognition of speakers, relevance of argument, and absolute prohibition of applause or demonstration. Standard of review. The Board of Zoning Adjustments has the power to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged there's an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by any administrative officer in enforcement of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. The board also has the power to hear and determine appeals for applicants who have been refused a building permit because of a violation or conflict with the zoning ordinance or the official map of the city. The applicant's appeal to the Board of Zoning Adjustments is governed by Section 5-408 of the City of New Orleans Home Rule Charter.
Thank you. So. Okay. All right. All right. We have another request to move a docket number out of order. It's item number 05422 for Decatur Street. And we'd like to move this and just until after the second item on the agenda.
So there's a request by staff to hear item 2 first and move the first item out of order.
Yes, we'd like to move Decatur Street till after Louisiana
it.
Avenue.
And as a quick clarification, the property owners are awaiting the arrival of their attorney whose flight was landing.
Got it. Okay, so there's a request from staff. Is there a motion on the floor to hear item number 2 out of order?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second on the floor to hear item number 2, BZA docket number 055-22 out of order, and we'll hear that item first. Please vote your screens. Okay, that motion is passed, and let's proceed with BZA docket number 055-22.
All right, thank you. The next item, BZA docket 05522, relative to the property at 1738 Louisiana Avenue, is an appeal of the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding issuance of permit number 22-08048-RNVN.
Good morning, Board. My name is Ashley Becknell. I'm the Chief Zoning Official. Relative to 1738 Louisiana Avenue, the applicant's appeal alleges an error in the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding the issuance of permit number 22-08048-RNVN. The subject of this appeal is the issuance of the aforesaid permit number at 1738 Louisiana Avenue. This permit is for non-structural renovations to a standard restaurant. Appellant argues that this use is more appropriately categorized as a bar, but the department disagrees. As a preliminary matter, all applications to the department are reviewed on their face, and the information contained therein is assumed to be accurate. Any deviation from these submitted documents in actual operations would be an enforcement issue. Here, applicant has proposed to operate a standard restaurant in line with the CZO. A standard restaurant is defined as an establishment where food and/or beverages are prepared to order, served by waitstaff, and usually consumed on premises. A standard restaurant's principal method of operation includes ordering by customers from an individual menu or menu board and the service of food and beverages by a restaurant employee at the same table or counter where the items are consumed. Standard restaurants may sell and serve alcoholic beverages. Average monthly revenue from food and non-alcoholic beverages shall exceed 50% of the total average monthly revenue from the sale of food, non-alcoholic beverages, and alcoholic beverages. CZO 26.6. The applicant indicated that there would be full table service for customers and that there would be a permanent menu board, both of which are listed features of standard restaurants. The submitted hours also conform to those for standard restaurants, including morning hours starting as early as 9 a.m. on weekends. Applicant submitted a menu showing a variety of made-to-order items. Appellants argue that the applicant failed to complete the summary of the list of facilities within 300 feet of the location. While this is indeed part of the form, restaurants are excluded from the 300-foot radius requirements under the city's ABO code. See City Code Section 10236A. No Class A permits other than a Class A restaurant, Class A hotel, or Class A educational permits shall be granted to any alcoholic beverage outlet within a 300-foot radius of any playground, place of worship, public library, or school. This is not the sole error in their 20.3.ZZ form. Applicants also indicated that they had a standardized floor plan, architecture, and/or site design over several locations, but an internet search does not show any other daiquiri rolled locations. Applicants also indicated that they intended to install hard finish stationary seating arrangements, but the submitted plans depict traditional tables and chairs. Appellant argues that these features are more typical of a fast food restaurant, but we believe they are erroneously selected based on a reading of the totality of the information submitted. Even so, we do not believe this plan is submitted, even including those features, would be classified as a fast food restaurant because they intend to offer table service. Fast food restaurants, by definition, do not offer table service. Restaurant, fast food, an establishment which may be part of a chain of fast food outlets that is oriented around the quick service of meals for on-premise or off-premise consumption. Typically, a fast food restaurant's design or principal method of operation includes 3 or more of the following characteristics. 1, a permanent menu board is provided from which to select and order food. 2, standardized floor plans, architecture, and/or sign design are used over several locations. 3, customers pay for food before consuming it. 4, a self-service condiment bar is provided. 5, trash receptacles are provided for self-service busing. 6, furnishing plan indicates hard finish stationary seating arrangement. 7, drive-through service is offered. And 8, most main course food items are prepackaged rather than made to order. Fast food restaurants may not offer alcoholic beverages for sale. Most importantly, it concludes table service by restaurant employees is not provided. CZO 26.6. Appellants also argue that the floor plans featuring of a lounge area with pool table, number of tables proposed, and the business name featuring a drink name should be considered as factors in determining whether this will operate as a standard restaurant or bar. There is nothing in the CZO limiting any of these items, and applicants have met the requirements of the CZO to be considered as a standard restaurant. Appellant also points to the bar across the main seating area. This bar, described on plans as a service area, is permitted counter seating in accordance with the definition of standard restaurants, which allows the service of food and beverages by a restaurant employee at the same table or counter where the items are consumed. CZO 26.6. There is a separate holding bar identified in the plans, which is compliant with the requirements for holding bars set out in CZO 20.3.CZ. Given the above, it is clear that the applications propose a standard restaurant in accordance with CZO 20.3.ZZ and 26.6. Therefore, the issuance of permit 22-08048-RNBN was not an error, and the department's determination should be upheld. As an update, this was deferred from a prior meeting. The update is that the applicant has provided revised plans, a copy of which were attached to the summary. These plans depict a fully separate food area and holding bar that complies with 20.3.ZZ. The department continues to believe that this venue is properly permitted as a standard restaurant.
Okay, is the, excuse me. The applicant for the appeal present?
My name is Donna Robertson. I live at 2223 Marengo. I'm the president of the Dallas Neighborhood Association. I'm here today speaking on its behalf. So we want to just reiterate some of the aspects of their business model that are more in line with a bar than a restaurant. The original renovation application was for a bar. Cohen High School is approximately 250 feet away from the property, which they omitted from that application. The original floor plan did contain a 29-foot bar across the back and a lounge area with a pool table. The name of the business is Daiquiri World, or was Daiquiri World, which the sign is still on that building that states that. The hours of operation state that they will be open till midnight on the weekends. That is not normal of the restaurants in our neighborhood. More of our restaurants close at 10 p.m. Weekday or weekend. And at our June association meeting, where the Daiquiri World did attend that meeting, they stated that they were unsure at that time whether or not they were going to have an age limit or an age requirement to enter the premises. It's perplexing why a restaurant would even think about having an age requirement on it. So again, adds more questions about the intent of this actual business. And I think some members of this board last month agreed that the aspects of this business did lean more toward a bar. In addition, the renovation costs exceed 50% of the value of the property, that value being on the NOLA tax assessor's office, and therefore should have required a substantial improvement permit. The use of the building is being changed from a retail phone store to a restaurant and should have required a change of use permit. The architectural drawings, the original ones, were not prepared by a licensed architect, and as pointed out by this board, contained many errors, one of which was the holding bar area. Lastly, the alcohol, there's never been any alcohol sales on this property. A request was made for one in 2010, and the city council denied that request. For all of these reasons, we're asking for this application to be properly vetted and scrutinized by safety and permits and by this board. Lastly, at the last meeting, at the last board meeting here, the board members encouraged the Daiquiri World team to work with us on moving forward, and we have not heard from them. So the fact that there's new plans is kind of new to us. Helene, I'll turn it over to you if you have any more additional.
Good morning. My name is Helene Barnett. I reside at 2030 General Taylor Street. When I was here last month, along with Donna, I spoke more as a neighbor with concerns for the business. Those concerns still exist. We've not heard anything that eases our concerns from a neighborhood perspective. The block immediately behind has no parking. We are really concerned about the possible collision between this business and customers and the products served with Coyne High School, which, as Donna reiterated, is less than 250 feet away from the facility. And the hours are very concerning. This is a residential neighborhood. It's like a next door neighbor. We are not aware of a positive scenario with a daiquiri establishment in New Orleans having a positive impact on a neighborhood. To the contrary, it's usually pretty chaotic and extremely harmful to the quality of life for the residents. We are not opposed to a business at this location. It's simply the type of business that's opening here, and we feel very strongly that it will not have a healthy impact on our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in support of the appeal?
Good morning, Justin Schmidt, 1506 7th Street, New Orleans. I'm here on behalf of myself as a neighbor in close proximity. I'm bothered, and I'm speaking in opposite or in support of this and in opposition to the director's decision for the sole reason it seems like at some point, and this is carried over in several of these dockets, the director has adopted a position that she's entitled to look at an application on the date it's submitted and take a snapshot of it. And despite contrary information or documents that are submitted to her after that point in time, she rests her decisions based on what was presented to her, saying she is entitled to rely on the representations of the applicant. Chapter 26 of the city code with respect to building permits is fairly clear that the director has an ongoing obligation to monitor these permits, the unfettered right to rescind them when mistakes have been made or when she determines that false information has been provided. So in deliberating with this, I'll leave it to you to talk to council, but you need to go back and look at chapter 26 and see what the director's responsibility, not rights, but responsibilities and obligations are with respect to fraudulently filed applications. In fact, if you look at the application, there's actually language right above the signature line, and all of y'all should have an application of a variance or an appeal application right above the signature line that states that this is being submitted, under oath, that, it will be rescinded if it's found out to be this. And this is a narrative that again, I think this department has adopted to get out of some of these issues. And I just think it's inappropriate. I'd encourage you to look at it a little closer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Justin. Anyone else here to speak in support of this request? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this appeal?
Good morning. I guess I'll just reiterate also.
And just real quick, name and address. for the
Morgan
record.
Walker, 1738 Louisiana Avenue. As I said the last time, we've made major adjustments once we met with the neighborhood association to appease them prior to coming to this meeting before you guys. As far as a name change, we took out the pool table, we added more seating. We've done everything as far as meeting with them. So we wanted to appease you guys. We completely separated the holding bar from restaurant seating. That's what the revised changes are. Again, everything else that was stated from them is completely without merit due to the zoning issues. Everything else will be addressed, future or, whatever comes up, but everything else we completely cooperated with safety and permits. We, submitted all the documents that we needed to in order to complete these things. Our architect is licensed. His name is Taylor Scott. He also provided his information and via email. Also, I canvassed the neighborhood myself, spoke with them, and also got comments and concerns. And we are also working with the neighbors and the neighborhood doing that till this day. And this location is located on Louisiana Avenue with plenty other businesses and restaurants that operate from 11 p.m. to midnight. Della Chase Wine Bar, people, they have outside seating that's right there 2 blocks from me. And I think they close at 11 p.m. So, yep, it's always been a restaurant. I'm planning to operate it as a standard restaurant and go with the zoning codes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to this request, to this appeal?
Good morning. My name is Stephen Kennedy. I live at 927 Poyfair Street. And I guess I want to reiterate what I spoke last time to this commission about. A couple of folks don't speak for the entire neighborhood. And we find that a lot that happens in this city. We have this NIMBYism that goes on and folks say, well, we would like to have this business, but just not in our neighborhood. And it's very unfortunate that, you hear folks to come to criticize the work that staff is being paid to do. These folks are professionals that look at these regulations and rules every single day. Every single day. And you have individuals with their own agendas come and question these folks for making decisions based on the rules before them. And so I just would ask this body, these folks, they made the adjustments that they need, that you all asked of them. You all asked them to go back and make adjustments to make sure that they in the confines of the rules and making sure that 50% of their sales are not exceeded by alcohol, making sure that they made adjustments to the floor plans. These folks did all that. They did all that was asked of them. And you still have folks who still saying, hey, they didn't come talk to us, which they already did that. To ask every business to go and speak to a few folks who say that they represent the whole entire neighborhood, that is not the case. These folks have done their due diligence. And so when we have young entrepreneurs that's before us and business people who are going to generate sales tax revenue for the city, I think it's very unfortunate that folks come with their own ideology and what you all should do and say. And I think it's very unfortunate, and I just hope that you all take into consideration that they did make all the adjustments necessary. All the adjustments necessary. And so I just hope that you all deny this appeal and take the recommendations on what you all staff has proposed to you all today. So thank you once again for your time.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition to this request?
Good morning. I'm Yesha Clark. I live at 4751 Mark Drive. I just wanted to come up and express on the record how I don't appreciate somebody, Mrs. Justin Smith, he's here, unrelated to what's going on, to get up here and say that fraudulent information was included in the application when that never happened. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to this appeal?
Good morning, board. Zach Smith Consulting, 530 South Norman C. Francis. I am not being compensated to be here. I apologize to the staff and to the board to continue to have to hear these cases that are meant for the legislative branch to hear some of these concerns. Again, a lot of the public just doesn't understand what an appeal of the department means. And I've read through every single one of those comments over the weekend and just continue to see the arguments about, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this. It's an extremely technical decision that was made by the department. It's based on a lot of consistency with making the same case again and again and again. As in my professional capacity in government, we always would tell people, please take it up with your council people and look at changing those rules if there's issues, because the department has to work within the law. I think they've worked within the law very well. And again, the majority of the comments that have been made are all based on fringe arguments that are better suited for like a city planning commission argument if this was a conditional use. We know this is not. It's most frustrating to me as someone who's seen development in a city, saw 5 blocks away a welcome open arms from the neighborhood for a liquor store, which might be a nice wine and spirits place. And here we have a valid bona fide restaurant that then gets a group of people that go after it. So, if we want to bring in those fringe arguments, again, we have a liquor store. And again, it's a very fine establishment. I don't want to knock the wine cellar, but 5 blocks away on the same exact street. And I haven't heard a peep about that. We need to encourage more businesses. We need to encourage young women of color to actually be able to come in here and open up. And as we know, as technocrats, there's no requirement that anyone have met with the neighborhood. And the fact that she took it upon herself to meet with the neighborhood, I think is the most commendable thing in the world, because I probably would have gone a different route. But thank you guys. Please uphold the decision of the department and have a great day.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak in opposition to the appeal? Okay, seeing none. We do have an opportunity for rebuttal.
Just a couple more comments, particularly regarding the name of the business. While the owners have agreed to change the name, And we appreciate that. However, their sign that says Daiquiri World is still on their building and has been since May. So everyone driving by has already seen that this will be a daiquiri shop. I wish they had taken the sign down. I think it would have said a lot about their intent of how they want to run this business. And it's hard for me personally to get over that. Their hours of operation, again, till midnight. Not too sure the purpose of that. If you're a family, if you're a restaurant, most of the restaurants here close at 10. I agree with Mr. Smith in that there does need to be change, and we will be routing back to our council member about how these sorts of applications should be vetted and scrutinized by safety and permits. That is definitely on the top agenda for us to do exactly that, Mr. Smith. And with regard to the liquor store, I'm assuming he's referring to Martin Wine Cellar, which closes at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Just to tag onto what Donna simply said about.
And just as just a point of clarity, because I know, I mean, it's two individuals. I know there's the applicant. Can we still hear them? It's a joint rebuttal?
As long as they don't exceed the time limit.
Okay, I just want to make sure procedurally. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that in addition to Martin Wine Cellar closing at 7 p.m., Martin Wine Cellar has been in basically the same location in that neighborhood for over 75 years. Donna and I are here because fortunately we perhaps have more flexibility with our schedules, but I assure you we are not in the minority. We are simply two individuals that are able to be here and represent and share concerns of what is certainly the majority of our neighborhood, as indicated by the 90+ letters of opposition written to the BZA. I don't know what the average amount of comments are for a neighborhood for a situation like this, but my thought is that this represents a fraction of what we know to be the opposition and concern for this business. I really believe just because people are very busy, I think that there are quite a few people who aren't even aware of what's going on. So the fact that 90+ individuals took the time to passionately share their concerns about this, I don't think should be ignored. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more comment about the number of neighbors in opposition and the number of neighbors in support. So we're a neighborhood association. We have active members that come to our meetings. I cannot force neighbors to come to our meetings. I wish every single neighbor in our neighborhood, resident in our neighborhood, came to our meetings. We speak on behalf of the active members of our neighborhood association. Is it every single neighbor? No, it's not. It's not every single resident there. We speak on behalf of the active members who actually participate in our association. Thank you.
Thank you. So I know there's up for board discussion, but a couple of things I think that's important for us to address up front. We're looking at this purely from a technical review of what was submitted from a plan standpoint. And yes, I brought a lot of commentary at the last board meeting regarding the actual plans that were submitted. I had a moment for pause based off of some of what we saw. But as a board, we also granted a deferral, and they had the opportunity to still go back and to adjust their plans, even to address a lot of what the concerns were provided in public comment, as well as what was presented from the dais. So I want to make sure one thing is clear. While whatever the name of the business may be, that's not what we're here to review in any capacity, and nor should we be looking at this from a space of a race to how many people come to speak in support or against. That's not what we're here to look at. It's purely technical from the plan standpoint. Coming back to some of the earlier comments in the last meeting, the plan has been changed. I think I even brought up what was considered the bar area and what was being served, and they have made that reduction as well as removed other elements from the plan that actually helps to increase their seating count. So while we understand what some of the concerns may be, I understand us to purely be looking at this from the technicality of what was submitted within the plans and assuring that there's some alignment with what the department has provided for us as their case to issue a permit. So that was the only comments I wanted to provide, if anybody else has anything.
I do have a question for the young lady, the proprietor, if you could come on up. To echo the vice chair's comments, we are only supposed to look at the technical plans and the strict criteria. But since I mentioned it last meeting, you were here, meeting before last, I'll just ask for, just for clarity, the revised name, DW Grill, which I like, sounds good. Will that be the corporate name, or will that name be branded on the building once you guys are complete?
That'll be the brand on the outside of the building. So yeah.
Okay, I just kind of
And
wanted to.
that's what we went with on the outside.
That was,
So it'll just say DW actually. It'll just be like a world logo with DW on it.
okay.
It'll still say grill though.
Yeah.
Because
Can you hear me? I'm off. Some of the comments that were made, I've had time to reflect on even myself. This weekend, my wife and I were looking for a quick place to run. We were in Metairie, and Carrabba's and Bonefish Grill were open until 11. It made me think of you guys and staying out a little bit later. In the vein of being a pure play restaurant that may happen to sell alcoholic beverages and fancy daiquiris.
yeah.
So you know, I gotta try to step back a little bit and think about it from two sides, because I was literally looking for a place. I said, well, if I
And
was
we
up-
literally, when I,
Yeah.
thinking and reading the comments, we didn't want to limit ourselves to just daiquiris as well.
Sure.
So having that signage and being able to market through DW is just a smarter move on our end as well.
I commend you on the revised plans. It does present itself much more clearly as a restaurant, not a daiquiri shop with a couple of tables. Besides that, I don't have any other comments for you. I did have a question to the city, and forgive me if I might have missed something, but the applicant brought it up, so I just wanted to ask, not being the most technical, I'm sitting next to technical guys here, but the 50% trigger for the construction that might trigger a different permit. Is there any meat to that argument there?
As the technical person sitting next to you, I had the same question. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
I believe that the permit applicants in this case are working with the building official on those issues, but those would not be a zoning concern. They are more of a building side issue.
And I guess same would go for the change of use. I remember when it was a phone store, and now we're literally going from like a retail front, walk in and get your Cricket phone or whatever brand was there, to being able to sit down and have a meal. That's totally within that's all of that's A-OK, correct? For the applicant. I mean, there's no, is that a valid argument for the applicant who mentioned the change of use?
So yes, it is something that they will need a change of use permit for, but that's usually just part of your standard non-structural renovation permit application. So it's not a separate permit that gets applied for. So it's been reviewed in accordance with those regulations. That's why we looked at the holding bar and all those other things. So.
And that was part of the process that you guys went through in approving the young lady to move forward with her plans. It's nothing for us to consider today.
I believe the question before you today is whether this could be considered a standard restaurant. And we've presented our arguments that we believe that it is.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's important to make sure that we're not, there's a lot of arguments that's been presented, some of which are applicable to what we're looking at from the standpoint of what is submitted with their application as well as the plans. So,
Yeah, I was just gonna, I mean, I wasn't here for
Yeah,
the
go
last
ahead.
meeting, but the 50% rule and the value of the building and all that stuff, that's not part of this discussion because there's other things that get triggered with that as well. Looking at the building, maybe it could happen. I didn't look at it that closely, but
and
that's
that's
not part of this that's not part of our discussion. We're only looking at the zoning designation and that would be not, whether or not it's the 50% rule, that wouldn't be in, the permit
That's
might be
a-
different, right?
that's a BBSA issue,
BBSA
right?
thing, yeah.
Right, they won't be able to receive their certificate of occupancy without meeting all building code requirements to the satisfaction of the building department.
Thank you.
And we would not issue an occupational license until there was a certificate of occupancy.
All right. Any other questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Vice Chair, in regards to BZA docket 05-22, I move to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the Director of Safety and Permits, finding that there was no error in the interpretation of the CZO that we're talking about a restaurant here.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Diaz, seconded by Commissioner Higgins.
There's Alvarez.
Huh?
I didn't, you motioned. He motioned.
Gonzalez Higgins.
Yeah.
Yeah, Higgins.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I heard Diaz for some reason.
but he said Diaz.
I did.
All right, senior moment.
Don't call me out on my age. I heard that. There's a motion on the floor in a second to uphold the decision of the Director of Safety and Permits for BCA docket number 055-22. Understanding that no error was had in that decision. Please vote your screens. And that motion is passed.
Thank you. The next item is BZA docket 054-22 relative to the property at 209 Decatur Street. This is an appeal of the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits in conjunction with BZA docket 033-22 regarding the determination that a holding bar is legally non-conforming.
And I know that we had helped, I know we were doing this one out of order. Is everyone here for this item?
I'm not sure.
I was just going to say, Chairman, it appears Mr. Spears is still not here. I would normally, under other circumstances, continue to wait. Unfortunately, my aunt, my father's sister, funeral mass is starting at 11. I would have come, had I known this was an issue, I would have gone to the visitation first and come back. What I'm going to say is I'd like to go ahead because I understand it's important for Mr. Spears to be here. I've got to be somewhere else. I'd like to, I think maybe the board should defer this until the October meeting to allow the parties to be here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schmidt. I'm gonna just at least ask for the additional comments first and we'll deal with that first. All right, thank you.
That wasn't my spiel. Emily had earlier
understand.
asked me if it was okay to.
No, I completely understand. I just at least want to procedurally just go through some steps. If we need to come back to, I don't have an issue with granting additional time for you to provide your argument. So just with that, anyone else here to speak? Well, actually, the staff is supposed to speak before anybody else on this one. So sorry about that, Ashley.
If we're waiting on representatives, I think staff is completely fine with deferring this for an additional month at this point.
All right, but it looks like we have the owner here, but maybe not their legal representative.
So my name's Eric Bell. I'm the manager. My brother Charles Bell is the owner. Mr. Spears is only 10 minutes away, but we both in agreement that we can move forward with this to get it rectified.
Okay.
Hopefully by the time he walks in, we'll be where he needs to be at. But we would like to move forward.
Okay, so Mr. Smith will at least proceed with it for now. Sorry about that. So Department, you have the floor.
Thank you. Relative to 209 Decatur Street, the applicant's appeal alleges an error in the decision of the Director of the Department of Safety and Permits regarding the determination that the second floor holding bar at 209 Decatur Street is a legally non-conforming structure. The subject of this appeal is the determination that the bar located on the second floor of 209 Decatur Street is a legally non-conforming second holding bar. Appellant argues that this determination was made on April 25th, 2022, but the department disputes this date. The department argues that 1, this appeal is untimely. 2, even if this appeal is timely, this issue has been settled by the BZA. And 3, even if the appeal is timely and the issue has not been settled, the department's determination on the matter is correct. This appeal is untimely because the decision date alleged by appellant is incorrect. The plan submitted in conjunction with the renovation permit for this property, 21-18800-RNVN, clearly show both the first floor and second floor bars. The permit was issued on August 20th, 2021. In order to complete the zoning review and approve the permit, zoning division concluded that the second floor holding bar depicted was legally non-conforming. If the department believed that the bar was not non-conforming, it would have ordered removal before granting the permit. Therefore, the non-conforming determination was made on August 20th, 2021. This appeal was not filed until May 31st, 2022, far outside the 45-day deadline to appeal. Appellant reviewed this permit application in detail in conjunction with his earlier appeal, BZA 033-22, which appealed the issuance of that permit and specifically addressed the issue of the dual bars. Mr. Schmidt knew that the department had determined that the second bar was legal at the time of the first appeal, and therefore this appeal is untimely. This appeal raises issues which have already been settled by this board. This board determined on May 2nd, 2022, that the department did not err in issuing the permit, which allowed this business to be permitted as a standard restaurant. The department's decision regarding the second holding bar, which again was clearly depicted in the plans approved by the department and specifically raised in appellant's appeal heard on that day, was a part of that permit approval. In determining that the department did not err in issuing the permit, the board also settled the issue of the legal status of the second holding bar. The issue of the second holding bar was discussed extensively at the May meeting of this board and was considered by this board in rendering its decision on that day. Appellant raised the same arguments during that meeting as they urge in this appeal. After hearing those arguments and hearing that the department determined that the second holding bar was a legally non-conforming structure, this board still determined that the permit was properly issued. This issue was fully settled by this board at the May 2nd, 2022 meeting. Finally, even if the board believes that this appeal is timely and raises new issues, the argument advanced by appellants do not demonstrate an error by the department. The department has long recognized that certain elements of buildings may be considered non-conforming structures, including holding bars that do not conform to the definition created in 1996. Based upon the plan submitted, the department determined that this holding bar was likely a legally non-conforming structure. Non-conforming structures are not subject to the 180-day abandonment period that non-conforming uses are. However, if this is indeed a non-conforming use and not a non-conforming structure, the use was not abandoned under LARS 334882 and Zoning Interpretation Memo Z-22-04, which pauses the 180-day abandonment clock from March 11th, 2020 through March 16th, 2022. Because appellant argues that the last use of the holding bar was on May 31st, 2020 under LARS 334882 and Z-2204, any non-conforming uses would be deemed abandoned on September 12th, 2022. This item has been deferred from a prior meeting and the following update is provided. Non-conforming structures are defined as a structure that fails to meet the proper bulk and dimensional regulations, including but not limited to floor area, open space, height, and yard requirements contained in the current ordinance. A legal non-conforming structure is a structure that legally existed prior to enactment of the current ordinance and was legally maintained after the effective date of the ordinance. CZO 26.6. Similarly, the department wishes to highlight the following language in CZO 25.4.a. Structures that at one time conformed to applicable zoning regulations, but because of subsequent amendments to this ordinance no longer conform to applicable applicable yard, height, lot coverage, or other dimensional or bulk provisions of this ordinance are considered non-conforming structures. The rules surrounding holding bars are clearly dimensional provisions of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. CZO 20.3.ZZ reads, in pertinent part, a holding bar is permitted only for a standard restaurant. The holding bar is an accessory use to the principal use of a standard restaurant. The holding bar is an area of a restaurant where alcoholic beverages are prepared and served at the bar. Holding bars are subject to the following. A holding bar cannot exceed 15% of the floor area of the public seating area of the restaurant, up to a maximum area of 300 square feet, including the service area behind the bar. The calculation of the total public seating area shall include the holding bar area in the calculation. If a portion of the holding bar is used to serve non-alcoholic beverages, such as coffee, that area is included as part of the holding bar area. The holding bar area shall be calculated from the back wall to the front of the bar. See figure 20.20-1, restaurant holding bar. If the holding bar is not set against a wall, the area shall be calculated from one bar front to another. B, the holding bar shall only be open to the public while food is being served in the restaurant's dining room. And C, through the conditional use process, the city council may grant a variance to increase the square footage of the holding bar area. Such variance cannot exceed 25% of the public seating area of the restaurant. The department would also like to reiterate that even if this board considers holding bars to be a non-conforming use rather than a non-conforming structure, LARS 334882 and Z-22-04 dictate that any non-conforming use in this case would not be considered abandoned until September 12th, 2022. Finally, we also reiterate our belief that this matter is not timely and in the alternative has already been decided by this board. I believe there's a typo in the report. It should say as set forth in the summary attached. In support of that contention, we attach a transcript of the relevant discussion from the May 2nd, 2022 meeting related to the question of whether this is a non-conforming structure, which shows that this issue is discussed at length and specifically considered by this board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant of this appeal ready to present?
Good morning, Justin Schmidt, 1506 7th Street, New Orleans, representing and speaking on behalf of the appellants. Our latest supplemental filing has been made a part of the record, and hopefully you've had a chance to review and consider the arguments made therein in support of this appeal. We are confident that this most recent submission, coupled with the supplemental materials we filed with the board on July 25th in anticipation of the August 1st BZA meeting, and the materials we initially submitted with our appeal application on May 31st, 2022, sufficiently support the appellant's position and can only lead to the board's grant of this appeal, overturning the director's decision that a wooden fixture within a building that was once used as a bar to serve alcoholic beverages is a non-conforming structure, as that term is defined and regulated in Article 25 of the CZO, and thereby not susceptible to the applicable prescriptive periods set forth in Louisiana Revised Statute and the City of New Orleans Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance on the 180 days that Ms. Becknell spoke of. We do, however, have one final argument which we reserve for this hearing so that it would not be lost in the voluminous filings from both the appellants and the City/Department of Safety and Permits, which has interjected irrelevant issues to this appeal on several occasions. That argument, introduced by a question which I posed publicly, but for which only board members can direct to the director, is this: why, if a wooden fixture used as a bar to serve alcoholic beverages is classified as a non-conforming structure, as suggested by the director, and thus constitute a condition within the premises that is not susceptible of prescription, do the operators here need to go through the arduous process of qualifying as a restaurant when they already had a bar on the first floor? If the director/Ms. Becknell truly considered the issues on August 20th, 2021, as they suggest in their appeal summary, why did the director even consider the second floor holding bar as an issue? If the second floor holding bar is a non-conforming structure, then the first floor holding bar is a non-conforming structure, meaning that this can be a bar by right. And does it need to be a restaurant? Now, are you going to tell me that these gentlemen went through the process back and forth with Mr. Kendall to establish that they wanted to prove up a restaurant as opposed to cruising in on a bar? Does the director really want us to say that they would rather have a restaurant than, and go through all those properties and all those iterations of approving menu and floor area and what are we going to serve it in, when they could be a bar? No, they would have taken the easier route. They would have said, bam, it's a bar. If the second floor holding bar is a non-conforming structure, then the first floor bar is a non-conforming structure. And so you wouldn't have to prove it was a restaurant. You wouldn't have to go through the process of a restaurant. You could say, look, we have a bar. We have a non-conforming bar here. It's always been a non-conforming bar. We're going to open up. I guarantee that's what the property owners, the operators would have rather done. They certainly would have opened up a bar. They still could serve food, but they'd have a Class A general permit, which would not restrict them to the same things that a restaurant would restrict them to. And they'd be a lot happier because they wouldn't have the neighbors breathing down their throats saying, you're not a restaurant. Your food sales are not commensurate with what they need to be classified as a restaurant. Here, this is a prime example of the department's, circling the wagons after the fact, after they've made a bad decision and trying to figure it out, and here they've got caught. If you look at the definition in 25.4.a, non-conforming structure, there is nothing in there that suggests that dimensional has nothing to do with a bar, a piece of wood on the second floor. It just doesn't happen. Further, this has nothing to do with 209. While we have pulled in reasons for 209, I want to make it clear for the record again that the application filed right here, black and white, appeal of the director's decision, April 25th, 2022, official determination that a holding bar, as that term is defined and regulated in Article 20, Section 20.3 ZZ12 of the New Orleans Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, is a legal non-conforming structure according to Article 25 of the CZO addressing nonconformities, which said determination was rendered on April 25th, 2022 and published to the general public for review April 28th, 2022 at 4:19 on the Llama permitting website. That email confirming those dates, as I said, is included in the packet from Emily Hernandez saying when those determination was there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in support of this appeal? Seeing and hearing none. Anyone here to speak in opposition to this appeal?
Good morning. My name is Charles Bell. I'm the owner of 209 Decatur. 209 Decatur. I just want to say he's arguing about a bar that we doesn't use. I don't use the second floor. I've only operated the first floor bar and restaurant. The argument that he's presenting about the length of the bar on the second floor, I have no idea why. Because we're only permitted to use the first floor as of now. We've never operated the second floor. Only used the first floor restaurant and the bar that's downstairs. That's it. So I don't understand what's the gripe with this guy or the neighborhood association. I've spoken to the neighborhood association. Every time I try to approach them, they tell me, we can't speak to you, speak to our attorney. So that's why I have an attorney, to speak to the attorney. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to this request?
Good morning, members. My name is Ike Spears. My address is 909 Porter Street, Suite 1825. And I appreciate you all deferring this matter to afford me an opportunity to get here, coming from the airport. First of all, I'd like to incorporate all of my comments from the last hearing in which I objected to this matter being deferred until today because I knew I had travel plans. And as I indicated, Mr. Smith indicated that no one would be harmed, and we indicated at the time that Mr. Bell and family were going through dealing with the grieving process of his mother having recently died. But this is borderline harassment. First and foremost, this appeal is untimely, and I wish someone would move to have it dismissed as untimely, because it is untimely. And we're allowing Mr. Smith to continue to abuse the process, which only encourages him. It only encourages him for you all to keep allowing him to abuse the process. Secondly, the owners of 209 are responsible African-American business owners. They have operated restaurants previously successfully with no problem. It should not be this hard for anyone, African-American or not, to do business in the French Quarter or to do business in the city of New Orleans. I indicated that I represent dozens of businesses, restaurants, establishments, nightclubs, barrooms, restaurants. It is becoming harder and harder for legitimate, responsible business people to do business in our city. And then when they pull up their tent and they go to St. Tammany, or they go to Jefferson Parish, and places where it's so much easier, we lose those tax dollars. So I would encourage you to, first and foremost, someone please make the motion to dismiss this appeal as untimely. Secondly, to uphold the decision of the city. It was well done, well thought out, responsible, and we should allow this to go forward and quit encouraging Mr. Smith to file these ridiculous, untimely appeals. I think we need to rebrand this city as a city where it is easy for responsible people to do business. And right now, that's not the case. The fact that these gentlemen have to take off and be down here for a second hearing, and it's my understanding before I got here, there was even a request to defer it again, which means they'd have to come back here for a third hearing. This is not what this city should be about. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you would uphold the city's decision.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to this appeal? Hearing none, the applicant has the chance to rebut.
Thank you. I'll first address Mr. Spears' comments, and I won't go farther than to reiterate the comments that were made at the previous docket. This is a very technical analysis. What the city should do and shouldn't do, that's a legislative function, like was earlier argued, and correctly so. That's not before you whether or not African-American businessmen deserve a break or we need to rebrand the city as a city that's welcome. We live in a city of laws. There are laws on the book. The books say this, and they are in violation of them. Plain and simple, that's the issue here. But 209 Decatur, as I said earlier, is not an issue, is not an issue in this appeal. The issue in this appeal is what I put on the application. That is what the issue is. The director's April, where she published it when she submitted her memo to to the BZA staff in anticipation of the July hearing, in conjunction with the May hearing, was a holding bar is a non-conforming structure. That is what I'm appealing. If that is the case, and there's nowhere in the application here that says 209 Decatur. I'm not doing that. I am going back and saying, I think, and this has repercussions throughout the city that are unheard of. I mean, if we're going to say that a bar is a non, do we need to go through a list? I didn't have time to go through the list of places where conditional uses had to be obtained for bars that had lost their non-conforming use, or for bars that had been closed down for so long. We didn't even go through that analysis, but it exists, where we said no. Here, the director is saying, it's all right that you've been closed for 50 years. If you've got a bar in there, that's a non-conforming structure, so you're entitled to open as a bar again. I see Ms. Becknell shaking her head. Perhaps she'd like to explain why that's not what she's saying, because that's exactly what her appeal states. The second floor is, there's nothing about fixtures in that definition. It says, when you look at it, the things that make it non-conforming structure, applicable yard, that's not the issue here. Height, that's not the issue here. Lot coverage, that's not the issue. Other dimensional or bulk provisions. There's nothing bulky or dimensional about a bar. That's a fixture in a building. These things, the non-conforming structure statute was set up for those things. The classic would be a 12 unit that I've had before this board years ago, a 12 unit apartment building that's in a single family residential neighborhood. And the owner doesn't know better. He kicks everybody out to do renovations. It's lost for more than it's not occupied for more than 6 months. So there's an argument by the neighbors that it's lost its non-conforming use. That's the case where there's a non-conforming structure because clearly it was built as a non-conforming structure. I mean, when it was built as a 12 unit apartment building. That's the situation where this is designed for, not where we've got a fixture, a wooden fixture that's a bar. It's simply, and as far as the prescription argument, let me go back. It's clear, and Ms. Hernandez's email to me confirmed it. It's in your packet. This was not made publicly until April 25th. And that wasn't even public. It was really the 28th one was public, but at least it was put in writing and delivered to a third party on April 25th. And as I counted the days in there, 45 days from that April 25th, giving the director the benefit of the doubt that that's when it was the published date or when we learned of it, although we didn't learn of it until the 28th, that was the official date. This whole discussion that on August 20th, 2021, they had a decision about this is laughable. It's absolutely laughable. When you go in, as I said, it's laughable because if that were the case, the first floor would have been a non-conforming structure too, and it would have been allowed as a bar by right through the non-conformity. And they wouldn't have even had to prove up that. As far as Mr. Bell's comment with the first floor versus second floor and why this is an issue, you notice he said as of now. Yeah, it's as of now because the state fire marshal has only given him permit occupancy for the first floor and limited to 42 people, 48 people, because they don't have adequate second floor fire escapes. But it's once they fix that, it could open up. So no, this is relevant. And as I said, 209 isn't an issue here. The issue here that you need to decide is Mr. As board member,
if you could bring
James figured out last week is it depends on what we're looking at here. And we're looking at the determination that a wooden fixture that was used to serve alcoholic beverages is considered a non-conforming structure.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Questions for our staff? I'm confused about the impact of granting a non-conforming structure status on a fixture like a bar. Seems like what I've heard so far is that if there is a bar-like structure in a building, even if it's been a long time since it's been used that way, it can still be approved as a non-conforming structure. And then my question is, if that happens, does that then approve operation like a bar? Because that's what it sounds like I'm hearing, because it's the difference between allowing a bar-like structure or fixture to be in place versus operating it and selling alcohol from it. And
So restaurants are allowed to sell alcohol from a bar of a defined size. What a non-conforming structure would do is allow that bar from which they are already allowed to sell alcoholic beverages to be larger than the dimensional requirements of the CZM. It would not allow them to operate as a bar. They would be operating as a restaurant with a holding bar of a non-conforming size. it doesn't conform with the dimensional requirements to have a bar of the size or to have the dual bars as in this. Together, they are larger than the allowed size.
So in this case, because it's spelled out within the CZO as what the restriction is, 350 feet, or what's the for holding bars?
It's 15% of the floor area or 300 square feet, whichever is
300,
less.
sorry, 300 max, correct. So because dimensional value is provided within the CZO for some type of structural element, it's how it's being determined from the staff that, yes, it's taking a blend between, let me step back. Mr. Schmidt is making a correct argument in terms of the structural dimensions have to be defined within the CZO. Within this case, we are talking about a structural element within the building that does have some dimensional requirements within it. So due to that, it does establish what that percent, the percentage or the maximum square foot of that structure as it's been presented.
Thank you. Second question. Therefore, the impact of granting the appeal would be then, correct me if I'm wrong, the operator would be required to change the floor plan, modify the bar structure so that it's compliant with the bulk requirements of the CZO for holding bar. But the operation of it would remain the same, or potential operation of it would remain the same in that they're the same. It's not like they'd be deprived of the ability to serve anything differently. It would just be an architectural change. Is that right? Or am I wrong?
That would depend on the scope of the motion. Mr. Schmidt has argued that this is not about 209 Decatur, despite the description of his appeals that reference 209 Decatur. So it would depend on what this board actually decides, whether as to the impact as to whether it would be localized. Yes, if it was decided in specific reference to 209 Decatur, they would have to make changes to how they are using either the structure on the first floor or the second floor that they would like to operate as a holding bar. If this decision is more broad than that, then we would have to consider the wording of the decision to fully understand its ramifications.
Thank you.
So just to continue that discussion about the scale of things,
Yeah.
I'm a physical thinker, so I'm trying to like draw a diagram in my head.
Yeah,
So
go
what
ahead.
you're saying is the bar that's there, the use of it will be only 15% of that bar, and it could be anywhere in the building, right? If there's multiple bars, you can split up that 15%. As long as the use area of that holding bar or holding bars is 15% of that physical object, the rest of it then would be used, if it's an existing thing in the building, would be used as a counter or a serving area or a place for food or other things, right? Is that what you're saying? So the bar is remaining as a physical object, but 15% of it is used for alcohol sales and consumption. The other part of it is like a counter, a place where you sit and have food. Is that what I'm understanding here physically? Just to be clear in my head, because
So I guess there's multiple ways they could potentially comply with it if, you know, the appeal is upheld and they have to comply with the 15% maximum size for the holding bar. Yeah, they could eliminate the second bar, portions of the first bar, whatever it would be to get into compliance with it. Or yes, they could use it as a seating counter or something else that would be allowed. If the upstairs bar didn't have alcohol in it, it would no longer be a holding bar, because a holding bar is defined as a place where, you know, drinks are prepared and served.
right. So just so I understand, there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm sorry, I couldn't read everything again. So is the whole bar then on the first floor being used as a bar, or is it just a portion? I'm confused. What is
The plan, we reviewed the plans. I'm not sure about the actual operations, but both the first floor and the second floor bar structures were on the plans as holding bars.
But is the notion, I mean, is the non-conforming used for the whole thing, or is it?
Non-conforming structure.
Non-conforming structure, sorry, is for the whole object that is built in the plan that's been there?
It is for the non-conforming fixtures of two bars within this structure. We agree that this is very technical and complicated. And we also agree that this is an area that's probably ripe for legislative change because this is one we wrestle with frequently on our own. Nick, I'm sure you have something to add that's more articulate than mine.
Yeah, and another point I did want to make on the potential like outcomes of this appeal, like this is fairly common that we get one restaurant, it shuts down, a new restaurant moves in. And oftentimes we have restaurants that have been there for, decades that might not comply with that holding bar standard. So this could potentially have very wide implications of every time a restaurant comes in for a new occupational license, we could say, hey, now you've got an excessive holding bar size. You need to remove that holding bar because it no longer complies with the current standards, which is generally something we don't do because it is a structural nonconformity. Same way we don't say, oh, this building doesn't meet the rear yard setback. Now you have to chop off the rear 5 feet of this building to comply with, the setback requirement.
Right. Okay. So that helps to understand then. Because I mean, for example, like, I don't know, just throwing one out there, Pascal Manales, right? You go in, it's got a big bar. I don't know what the square footage is, but that might not comply in the future if something happens.
Right, and that's why we mentioned that the holding bar size regulations, as far as we can tell, came into effect in 1996. Many of the structures, especially in the French Quarter, are much older than that and would have been built before they needed to comply with those dimensional regulations.
Two jacks. Two jacks would be a good example, right? I mean, that's okay. So,
And so because this went from restaurant to restaurant, that's how we made the decision, just as Nick said, we generally make those decisions that restaurant to restaurant is holding bar to holding bar, apples to apples.
well, that helps me understand the math side of it and the physical side of it. I still don't really understand what we're here for. So apologize.
I was actually going to, just from that. So Mr. Schmidt, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the basis, and I'm trying to keep it very pertinent to one item, the actual question at hand. And if I understood correctly, your presentation is formulated around, should we even be reviewing this, or should it have been considered a non-conforming structure or not, correct?
My issue is this shouldn't, the second holding bar should not be classified as a non-conforming structure. Any holding bar, not any holding bar should not be, or any bar in and of itself, any piece of, and I've been very clear, any wooden structure that was used at one point to be for the service of alcoholic beverages should not, it's within a building, does not constitute a non-conforming structure as defined in Article 25. And I would like to just to address Board Member Diaz's comment, because I think you got a wrong answer. A restaurant is allowed one holding bar, not two holding bars. If you look at the article, when you get to 12, a holding bar describes it, and A, 6 places in that paragraph, it says the holding bar is used, the holding bar area, the holding bar area. If the holding bar is not set against the holding bar. I know this because I had to do this with that doggone Frenchman and charters years ago. I had to go get a conditional use because the CZO allows for a second holding bar or a larger holding bar of the one you're entitled to through the conditional use process. And that in and of itself should tell you that one is allowed, because we had to go and get that for the second floor of that doggone corner Frenchman and charters.
Okay.
There's one holding bar per restaurant. It's limited to 15% of the seating for the restaurant where the patrons are, for the seating up to 300 square feet. A second holding bar or a larger holding bar requires a conditional use. And that is our point. Thank you.
Okay. So just question back to staff. I just want to confirm, do you agree with that position or not?
We don't. 26.2A says the singular number includes the plural and the plural the singular. So we hold every applicant to the dimensional requirements unless they have an argument as to why they should not be, for example, a structural nonconformity. But we believe that theoretically, the holding bar could be split into two separate areas based on that principle of construction.
Okay. If you got a question, I mean, but so just come on, just let's keep it brief. I just want to grant you the opportunity to make your
No,
statement.
well, I agree, and thank you, but I mean, that argument, and Ms. Becknell's an attorney, so she knows these arguments. To say what she just says, is she saying that the fact that the legislative branch in here, the city council, put in the requirement of a conditional use for a conditional use, or the opportunity to get a second holding bar with conditional use, is irrelevant, according to her reading. Because what she's saying is, because D is the point. I mean, that's just nonsensical. We wouldn't, if that's the case, we wouldn't need that language in there for a conditional use for a second holding bar.
All right, so
It renders it irrelevant.
Okay, I'm gonna just get to the point of, within a CZO, is there a requirement that states in order for you to receive a second holding bar, you need to apply for conditional use?
No, the conditional use language is, I'll quote it from the provision. It's through the conditional use process, the city council may grant a variance to increase in the square footage of the holding bar.
Right.
Such variance cannot exceed 25% of the public seating of the area of the restaurant.
That's what I thought.
I will also, no, I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board?
Question. So there was a suggestion in the applicant's materials that if we were to accept this policy, if we were to not, grant the appeal, that essentially the standing policy would be that any structure such as a pole could be used for a use that is not permitted just because a non-structural or a structural nonconformity was recognized. That seems like a stretch to me. And so I would love to hear your take on it, but because you're more familiar with.
Yes,
policy
so
practices.
in this case, what we decided is that this standard restaurant has a nonconformity for a holding bar that's larger than would be allowed for a standard restaurant. This does not give them the right to operate a bar or anything else. So if they were to apply saying, hey, we've got a large holding bar, therefore we should be allowed as a non-conforming bar, we would reject that application. And the only possible way that could be considered is if they could document that, the city had noticed for 10 years that they were really operating as a bar and not a restaurant. And so just the fact that the holding bar is larger than would normally be allowed is not something that gives you a right that's otherwise prohibited in the CZO.
And someone want to add on, because I want to make sure we stick to this point. In that case, when we're talking about bar versus holding bar, are there dimensional requirements or restrictions on bulk for a bar, just as a use?
No, the actual bar structure within the bar use can be as large,
correct,
as it wants.
So in that case, a bar, if this was going from a restaurant to a bar, and they're trying to say that the bar, what was a holding bar beforehand, was of a certain density, and it that way they could have a use of a bar. You're already saying that it would be rejected, and because that's not defined within the CZO, that's not the question. Versus in this case, holding bar to holding bar, because of the theoretical use that has been applied for, there is a bulk definition of what the structure can be, the 25% or the 300 feet. So because that's there, it's strictly only pertaining to holding bar, not to be confusing the language of a different use. Any other questions from the board? It's a pleasure to board.
It's in order.
Yes.
Regarding docket number BZA 054-22, I move to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the Director of Safety and Permits, finding that there was not an error in the interpretation of the comprehensive zoning ordinance.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Rufo and a second by Board Member Diaz to uphold the decision of the Director of Safety and Permits, finding that there was no error in the determination for BZA docket number 054-22. Please vote your screens. And that motion has passed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will begin now with the unfinished business regarding any other matters for election of officers. At this time, the board may wish to suspend the rules to table this item to the end of the meeting.
I think that's appropriate to move the election of officers to the end of the agenda. Anyone like to make a motion to suspend the rules?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for election
move it
officers to
back.
the end, yeah.
To defer it,
To
sorry.
defer- To defer to the end of the meeting.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to defer election of officers to the end of the meeting.
Thank you. We will now begin with new business for variances. Docket number 056.
Did we vote on this?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me? No, we did not vote. I was
I'm
waiting
getting
on it
ahead of
to pop up
myself.
first. That actually helped to expedite it. All those in favor? Aye. All right, that motion is passed. All right, now we can proceed. Thank you.
Go ahead, Esther.
The next item is BZA docket 5622 for a property located at 2550 to 2552 North Rocheblave Street. This request is for a variance from the provisions of Article 11, Section 11.3A1, Table 11-2A of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the addition to the rear of a historic single-family home that will encroach into the rear, two-family home that will encroach into the rear yard setback, further reducing the rear yard. The Department of Safety and Permits determined as part of its zoning review that the subject proposal is not compliant with Article 11, Section 11.3A, Table 11-2A of the CZO. The CZO requires at least 20% of the total lot depth in a rear yard setback or 15 feet, whichever is less. The applicant is seeking a variance to permit a rear yard setback of 3.5 feet where a setback of 14.6 feet is required. Staff finds that the request waiver meets all 9 standards for approval in Article 4 and therefore recommends approval subject to 4 provisos.
Is the applicant present for BZA document number 056-22? Name and address for the record, please.
Mike Watson, 2600 Arch Street.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Purchased the property with my mom. She's looking to move into it. The rear area of the home was falling. At first, there was a shed structure that was built behind it that housed all the utilities, and looking to reclaim that space. The bathroom is falling off. In order to repair the bathroom, we'd be at like 7 feet. It's already encroaching on the rear space that's required. It's like a 70-foot lot with a 10-foot front setback. So that would only give us 7 feet in the back in the first place just to repair that bathroom. Looking to put that utility space on the back side as well. We would have to have raised that utility room as well. The original permit was to have that raised, and in order to do any of the repairs that are required, we wouldn't have that space in the rear in the first place.
Okay, thank you. That concludes your comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else here to speak in support of BZA docket number 056-22? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this request? Seeing and hearing none, is there any questions from the board? It's the pleasure of the board.
The motion is in order.
If you're ready.
Regarding docket BZA 056-22, I move to approve the request for waiver, accepting both the staff's recommendation and the applicant's oral arguments, finding that he's met all 9 criteria, subject to 4 provisos. Three. Reason let me ask for clarification. The presenter said 4, but
It's
the
3
report says
provisos.
3.
I made a mistake. It's 3.
It is, okay. Subject to 3 provisos.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Gonzalez and a second by Commissioner Eggins for BZA docket number 056-22, accepting the staff's recommendation for the requested waiver of Article 11, Section 11.3.8.1, Table 11-2A for rear yard setback. And as the mover mentioned, also the oral argument presented by the owner's representative. So move for approval with the 3 noted provisos. Please vote your screens. And that motion is passed. Next item.
Next docket is BZA docket 5722, which is a request for variances from the provisions of Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1, and Article 13, Section 13.3.b.1.b of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the construction of a single-family residence with insufficient rear yard setback and a front-facing garage not located at least 5 feet behind the front facade of the principal building. The property is located at 5814 Louisville Street. The applicant is proposing to provide a 4-foot rear yard setback, which is below the required 20 feet and requires a waiver of 16 feet. The applicant is also proposing a front-facing garage that is not at least 5 feet behind the front facade, which also requires a waiver. So staff recommends denial of this request and finds that 5 of the 9 criteria are not met, and that literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. Special conditions and circumstances will result from the actions of the applicant. Granting of the variance will confer special privileges upon the applicant. The property regulations will not result in a demonstrable hardship. And the purpose of the variance is based upon a desire to serve the convenience of property or profit of the property owner or other interested party.
Is the applicant present for BZA docket number 057-22?
Good morning, board members. Again, Zach Smith Consulting, 530 South Norman C. Francis. Want to say, start off with a thank you to the staff. I think the report was very well written. And based on the consistency of various other reports, I think it falls pretty close in there with where it should be. There's a couple of particular things that we wanted to bring and discuss this morning, and I think there's some limitations to what and the nuance to what this site has that hopefully this board may consider. The first is, we generally have a disagreement over whether or not the garage door is actually 5 feet behind the facade. The language in the CZO calls out facade. As this board has heard on other things where there are, pools and front yards and things like this, we look at these build to lines and mixing and matching to stay consistent with the way that the city regularly reviews things. If this was any sort of partial demolition in a partial control district, any sort of covered porch, any sort of covered balcony, any vertical elements, which this garage, the garage portion of this building should be considered that facade. So the door, clearly 5 feet behind that covered porch, we do believe should essentially eliminate that. If there's a disagreement there, I think it's great to talk about. So if there is some consistency on that and agreement from the board, we do believe, there's further consideration potentially on this application as I know, again, the report was very well written, but it does mix both of the things being asked for as some of the, recommendations for denial. So it's not always clear exactly which one is which. Related to the L-shaped lot, I think, again, inside this report, it's very clear that this is a unique circumstance, is a unique condition, and it's not able to easily be looked at in context with some of these other properties. There's no other L-shaped lot in the report. Creating a 4-foot setback on that back, on what's considered to be the rear yard, is the most appropriate. If you were to put a 20-foot setback there, while there are other ways to potentially design this, you'd either have to eliminate building on almost that entirety portion of that rear yard, or you'd have something where it'd be so thin of a structure that would almost be impossible to build. We'd have a very, very interesting thin L-shaped building that goes to it. One of the things that came up more in the subdivision request is the general proximity to 610. It's one of the main reasons of pushing that front facade rather than facing Kenilworth. It's to push it to the Louisville side. So when we look at something, more convenience, not everybody in the city enjoys a front yard that looks directly at.
If you could bring your comments to a close.
Well, I'll introduce Ms. Leah Hill, who has the fourth part of our discussion to kind of give a history of some ongoing, so she can wait till any rebuttal or if allowed for additional public comment and support. But some discussions about her very long and good faith efforts with the department for the better part of this year, the great better part of this year to work with safety permits.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Name and address for the record, please.
Leah Hill, 5814 Louisville. So back in February, when we decided to purchase these lots, we started out purchasing one and then realized that the one behind it was available. We said, well, we can make something really nice out of this L shape. And against my judgment of hearing from opinions elsewhere that New Orleans wasn't the place to build and that the city would make it very difficult to build, we had never done something like that. So I love New Orleans. I do hospice in the city of New Orleans for 25 years. I've been doing hospice. So I was very passionate that we could bring something beautiful to that odd L shape there in the neighborhood. I came here to City Hall not knowing what I was doing, to be honest, had a preliminary plan and met Miss Jackson, Tammy Jackson, on the elevator. And she asked me where I was going and what I was doing. And she saw that I had my hospice badge on and said, how can I help you? So when I got up to the floor, she pulled me to the side. She looked at my plans and she advised me that the plans looked good, but there was a couple of things that I needed to go fix. And I went back to the architect, me not knowing what I was doing at all. My husband and I sat down with her and said, this is what she's suggesting we do. And I came back to City Hall. So in between my patients for the last 7 months, I've been running back and forth from City Hall, having emails back and forth with her, sending things in. And long story short, she did approve the facing front of 5814 Louisville, gave me the thumbs up and said that I had the green light to continue. So asked for my subdivision plans, which I went and had it subdivided thinking that I had done what I was supposed to do. Needless to say, graciously speaking to Ms. Hernandez, I hadn't even filled out a subdivision application, which I had to come here, and we had to do that previously to this hearing here. So very discouraged at that moment because that set us back several months as well. And so I continued. Needless to say, with every step that we have taken, I have tried to cross every T and dot every I. I have tried to do every single thing that was asked of us. We did get approval to make the Kenilworth side with the garage. She did ask that I remove the circular driveway that was original in my preliminary plans, which I did. She actually said, it looks like you've done everything that we've asked you to do. You can move forward. we moved forward with our architect. This has been an extreme hardship on me for the past 7 months, trying to do my already very stressful job and proceed doing everything that I thought was expected of me, because that's what, I did. And at this point, I'm very confused as to why we're even here today going over this, because I thought from the moment that I met her stepping foot into City Hall until this very moment that I was doing every single thing that was asked of me.
If you could bring your comments to a close. If you could bring your comments to a close, I'm sorry.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in support of this request? Anyone here to speak in opposition to BZA docket number 057-22? Hearing none, any questions from the board? So maybe a question, Mr. Smith, or to the property owner. Or maybe actually I should be asking this to staff. One quick question I have for you guys, and I see you trying to dance over there too, sir. Again, is this not the nuance of with the irregular shaped lot, that when we're dealing with the L-shaped lot configuration, once again, because we had something very similar to this before, when we're dealing with corner parcels in some of these neighborhoods, once the introduction of the lot now facing what would be the side yard, we now change the general orientation of this plan, henceforth actually causing the garage to fall into a different location and then probably triggering now how the 5 foot is being reviewed. Is that not the case? Or is it just that we're not acknowledging the column system, the column situation as a 5 foot feature?
Our staff received sort of a preliminary determination from safety and permits based on the plans that we had at the time. And they had noted that it did not look like it met that requirement due to the overhang. It had footings, or it didn't have footings, but it has a covering. But I think we would need to verify, after this meeting, whether it does indeed trigger the need for that variance. If it does not meet the definition for building line, and the orientation of the lot doesn't change, of course, because the front door is facing the corner side yard, but the way it's designed, it has kind of shifted the front. It's swapped the front and the corner side.
Right. So thinking through that scenario, I think if I remember correctly, when the CZO was changed and how some of the intent was configured for this, especially for neighborhoods like this one, it was so that the garage doors weren't front facing towards the primary street. And more often than not, if you look at like Lakeview area, those driveways and garages are either off the rear, or in most cases, you would have the side yard configuration in that garage door can be on the side yard as well, correct?
In Lakeview, there's a lot of, squares that have alleys that bisect them. And in those cases, you cannot have front facing parking areas. That includes driveways, garage doors. This is one of those scenarios where there is no alley accessible to this property. And so they don't have to abide by not providing a front facing garage. It just has to meet that 5 foot setback regulation.
Right. But again, we come back to the theory of, because this is an L-shaped configured lot, the narrowest dimension is being treated as a front yard, even with the door being placed to the side yard condition. Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
another quick question to staff, and this kind of piggybacks a little bit on what Commissioner James just mentioned. Just looking at the very first request for waiver, and talking about the rear yard setback of only 4 feet proposed. That 4 feet is for what we would traditionally call the rear yard and not what is shown with the, with the front door facing Louisville. So the rear, so in essence, their rear yard is on that brook side of the street, or behind the brook side. But in this case, you're considering the rear yard what they're in essence is using as a side yard on Brooks. I know that's a confusing. I'm trying because we've turned the house around.
Yes.
The house is now facing the front door. I'm walking in on Louisville, so their backyard, is on that L attachment, which is clearly a little bit more than the 4 feet, but in the strict rules of what we're talking about here, we're talking about the rear yard actually falling on Brooks.
That is correct. That is the official rear yard as defined by the CZO.
That's what
Based on the design, it's functionally an interior side yard, but it does not qualify for that setback because it is a rear yard for the CZO.
Gotcha.
So I'm just trying to understand the parking one. Is that something that can, I guess I've never really thought about this 5 feet behind the front of the building, and what does that really mean? And is that something that can be handled architecturally with a detail change? Is it, I'm just.
The way I've always seen that one, just in the past, I mean, I remember when that changed around, and it's this, I hate to refer to it as like a lake view design feature of trying not to have like a true facade, everything aligned in one spot. And basically the front door, as well as the primary entry, as well as the garage, wasn't in the same plane. So it's the intent to make more of a facade articulation and move the garage back further behind the front.
Right,
plane.
so you'd have like either the bay window or the front of the building.
Exactly.
Projecting, and then the thing beyond. But in this case, the Kenilworth side is the garage door entry side entirely.
Because of the L-shaped configuration.
So the neighboring building actually has that.
Right, next door has a garage door.
But the garage door is set 5 feet back, yeah. But based on the way this plan is laid out, unless there was, there's 2 garage doors. So.
Yep. Yeah. That's what's shown in this step back.
But the front door is Louisville.
But I think if I heard correctly, Emily, you had made a point earlier. One concern may have been that it wasn't showing a foundation under that feature. So that may have been a reason for that trigger. But again, if this plan is being shown as it's indicated, if there's 2 columns at that spot, I would assume that you would want to extend the foundation to that point, which may actually render the point moot.
It's possible it could be rendered moot. However, we of course don't want to speak on what safety and permits would officially determine. And the information we have now is that it appears the variance is needed.
Right.
We hear from Zach.
If you have a question.
It looked like you wanted to address that, and I was going to ask about Emily mentioned the footings and possible lack thereof, and we were talking about that 5-foot setback for the garage. Was there some commentary you had specifically to that?
So there's to kind of speak to both sides. I'm not the structural engineer, but I do believe that there's structural support in that foundation and underground to support those columns, as would be typical. I would offer, though, that in the event that out of these 2 things, that the garage, I would hope that everybody can see the real hardship and the real issue with the 4-foot setback waiver, and that if that is generally in consensus is something that's going to be approved today, I would generally say that it's going to be much, obviously simpler for some sort of modification to that garage door, some more traditional bump out or something, or an increased detail on that garage facade to essentially take that off the table. But all things considered, the greatest of the hardships is really there. I would stand by the fact that the vertical element should be considered the building line, and therefore it should be moot, but the 4-foot setback is obviously the one that makes a ridiculous building on an L-shaped lot.
Right, but I'm gonna come back to the point again. I think if I remember correctly, the intent was having the garage in that parking element 5 feet beyond the primary building facade, which actually does occur in this plan if you're looking at it purely from where the front porch and entrance actually is shown.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying, when I look at it, it's contorted or convoluted to
Right.
have that bump out thing.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'm reading it as it could just be a straight facade because it's actually around the corner. It's not the front, it's the side. So,
And they still have.
and conversely, to Zach's point, I mean, if you had to, you could redesign that a little bit and still get some parking and, but now that I understand it better, I mean, the only other thing is if it was turned 90 degrees, which I'm not suggesting because I think it's a bad idea, and the parking was fronting Kenilworth and it was set back 5 feet, it would be fine.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but having it turned around the other side and it lines up with the other people's garage, so I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. I just want to play architect, design doctor
So
on
I'll
that
let,
one. So I'm going to stop.
But again, I think it boils back down to L-shaped lot, irregular configuration, just because of how we define front yard versus side yard and how these building elements now placed within that lot parcel is what's driving the ship. So
It's that yard. Yeah.
Yep.
If a motion's on the order.
if motions in order if anybody has anything.
Okay, in regards to BZA docket 057-22, I move to approve the waiver request for Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1, rear yard setback, and 13.3.b.1.b, parking area location. I disagree with the staff and find that the applicant has met all 9 criteria, especially after some discussion and I'm reading through the applicant's attached letter addressing the 9 criteria. That's it.
Does that include any provisos?
Usually have to stand it. Read, there aren't any there. Bear with me here. Including the 3 standard provisos.
So I'm going to second, but can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Just so the parking thing, we're just you're saying that's letting it go. Okay.
As designed and presented.
Yeah. So what I was going to suggest, Zach, is that, maybe look at it a little more closely. You might be able to think about that elevation a little bit. Maybe make it simpler because you're not trying to do the 5-foot thing. And I'm in a second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Gonzalez and a second by Commissioner Diaz for BZA docket number 057-22 and moving to approve the requested waivers for Article 11, Section 13, Article 13, Section 13.3A.1, Table 13.2 for rear yard setback, and Article 13, Section 13.3B.1b for parking lot area. Taking the applicant's letter as well as comments provided at the meeting and moving for approval with the 3 standard provisos. And that's making sure to address the 9 criteria. And that motion is passed.
Thank you, board. Thank you, staff.
Next item.
The next item is BZA 05822 for a property located at 4040 Canal Street. This is a request for a variance from provisions of Article 15, Section 15.3A1, Table 15-2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit the construction of a mixed-use development with insufficient corner side yard setback. In accordance with Article 15, Section 15.3A1, Table 15.2, new developments are required to provide a 10-foot corner side yard setback as a corner lot with frontages along Canal Street and South Carrollton Avenue. The applicant is seeking a variance to provide a corner side yard setback of 0 feet. Based on this report, staff believe that the requested variance of Article 15, Section 15.3A1, Table 15-2 fails to meet criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 of the standards for variance of Article 4, Section 4.6, Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, and that there are no special circumstances which are particular to the land. Literal interpretation of the ordinance will not deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. The special circumstances were caused by the applicant. The variance will confer on the applicant special privileges. The property regulations will not result in a demonstrable hardship. The change is exclusively for the convenience and profit of the owner. Therefore, staff recommend denial of the requested variance. However, the applicant has requested that this matter be deferred to the next meeting.
All right, is the applicant present for this application?
Good afternoon. I'm Vincent Marcello. I live at 508 Barracks. And we had just received the staff recommendation for denial on Thursday and didn't have a full chance to make any changes and all. But we would like to discuss the project if possible and see the setbacks. I represent CSC Investments, which had bought the property in 2002. It consists of a number of buildings, the Woodhouse Spa, Theo's, and Juan's Flamborito, and a dentist's office. It was slated to be torn down, and we had a group that purchased the property and renovated all of those properties. It left us with the lot on the corner, which is a little more difficult to build on. We have a letter of intent from a specialty restaurant, the Main Squeeze Juice Company, which we feel would be a very good addition. We've held the neighborhood participation program meeting, and we have had no anyone against the project at all, only in favor. The side yard setback is the variance that we're looking for. But if you look across the street, the Oshner does not have a 10 foot. It has a 4100 Canal Street address, does not have a 10-foot setback on the side yard. If we were to build to the property, I mean, the designated setback, it would really have a very narrow building on that property and would kind of inhibit us to lease to the Main Squeeze. The architect for the project is here. I'd like for him to possibly discuss any changes and other things that we might be able to change onto the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Joey Carlson, architect.
Address, please.
189 Maple Ridge.
If you could come up a little bit closer to the mic so we
hello?
can make sure you can lift it up.
All right.
Just want to make sure we can hear you.
Yeah, 189 Maple Ridge Drive, Metairie, Louisiana. As you can see, just to give you more insight on the corner side yard with this image, there's a dashed line, and there's a dashed line that represents what we can build to. And you know, we can make some modifications if need be to compensate, but you know, right now we would be left with a 16-foot wide frontage on the building, the way the corner yard setback is. And right now we slowly have the building taped because of the angle of the property line. The building kind of tapers away from that property line currently. So if you have any suggestions or just some insight, you know, be happy to discuss.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak in support of this request? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this request? Hearing and seeing none. Just a quick question to staff with regards to the staff report. Understand that usually when we're dealing with these side yard setback conditions, a lot of this is dealing with also preservation of line of sight at these corners. Has any of that been taken into consideration with the unusual distance between the property line to the existing curb at this corner?
Can you please clarify preservation line of sight from which?
So when you traditionally with these setback conditions at a corner, you're also trying to protect the line of sight around a corner. So basically, like when we're dealing with the 14-foot vision triangle that you may have at a corner, case in point, similar to within the CZO, I think it spells out there's a certain distance that the fence has to have a certain level of transparency so you can see around that vanishing corner. In this case, I know we're not dealing with an oncoming traffic situation because of at this intersection, this is that corner where traffic is turning to the right. So you're not dealing with a vanishing point that you're not able to see if oncoming traffic is coming through that intersection. Also knowing that, well, I think Juan's Flying Burrito is actually at a 0 setback right behind the property. But again, the sidewalk condition, do we know that distance from the property line to the curb? Actually, that may be more to the architect.
It should be about 15 feet.
Okay, so if that's about 15 feet of setback from curb back, where traditionally I think we would see somewhere between 6 to 5 feet, 6 feet to only 8 feet of from curb to property line in most conditions, just does that have any type of leeway with this application?
As is the public right of way on the side of the streets, there is a slight bump out as indicated on the plans.
Right.
And so looking at the position of the stairs, as well as the positioning of the tree, as well as where the actual property line is, just legally in the CZO, it states that there has to be a 5-yard corner side yard setback. And so looking at what is required and what is being proposed all the way to that exact end, this lot is current, or this section or portion of the lot is currently undeveloped with anything. So while there is that requirement, there may be modifications to the plans to produce something a little more in line with that setback requirement. Does that answer your question?
You're saying that it needs to at least be 5 feet due to what condition again? I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
The 5-foot setback is just a minimum requirement in the CZO.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling
You feeling where I'm going with that?
that it's a little tight at that corner.
Right.
I'm also wondering just which way the building really wants to address. If it, looking at the context, it's a little confused because there's all the stuff on Carrollton, which is your main street there, and then you've got Canal, which also has some houses, but they seem to be more like residential houses, where the stuff on Carrollton is more of like shops that are,
I think
like
both
built commercial.
I think it's all commercial because
But the architecture, like the architecture.
Oh, yeah.
The neighboring house, you can see it in the thing there. It's like an apartment building kind of type, like townhouse or house kind of structure. But if you go around the corner, that's where you've got that kind of 1950s, 1940s kind of commercial density. I mean, I'm curious is this HDLC? Did I miss HDLC?
Yes,
commentary.
It
on
is.
It is.
I was just curious if they had any.
Has Canal Street address.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they had any commentary about how the building addresses the corner itself, because it seems like that would be a great design opportunity to work with that corner and kind of, sorry, I'm playing architect again, deal with that corner and make it much more expressive as a building that really wants to face both sides. And I do feel the concern about that how tight that is and cars coming around the corner. Anyway,
we can definitely move the building back another 6 feet from where it currently is, because it's maxed out at the minimum front yard setback. So I can go plus or minus 3 feet of the average. So that would be, I can max it out at 14.5 feet.
Yeah.
Which would pick up some more space on the side yard because of the angled property line. And,
But I think
more
you s-
visual
But
around.
you
the
still have
corner.
the condition on Carrollton anyway, just with that bump
Yes.
out condition towards the back portion. So
Yeah.
is that really even providing any benefit?
But I guess, has this gone to HDLC already? Have they reviewed it?
No, not yet. We're
Because
trying to-
I mean, my concern about this is that the architectural language is of kind of a garden district like house, not a corner commercial for the zone. So I'm just concerned. I'm just raising the concern that they may have some objection to the actual architecture itself. But
So as far as where this is located specifically, this particular intersection is not necessarily underneath HDLC review or approval. The only thing that will need to be reviewed by HDLC would be demolition if it contained anything more than 25% of the actual lot itself. And being as though there, I believe, 4 to 5 other principal buildings on this exact lot that will require other buildings to have renovations for HDLC to have any say on what the building actually is required to look like.
okay, so this isn't coming before them. All right. So never mind. I do feel like the building itself could address the corner in a different way. It might alleviate some of your challenges and still have some of the bulk that you're trying to get.
And if, when I'm looking at the plan, that's the Carondelet, wow. The Carrollton entrance is going to a common lobby that's 2 tenants, correct?
Yes.
So it's almost similar to, you said Main Squeeze is a proposed tenant at this location. This is almost similar to how it's being handled at, well, the Toussaint location, where there's 2, I think there's the bakery as well as like a Main Squeeze, and they have, but the lobby is actually off the parking lot in the back. It's all kind of weird configurations there too. But, and again, that's a corner lot condition. So you almost have a design element that's true to what happens along Carrollton to some capacity in what's shown, but then by having a gallery feature on Canal Street side, that still provides some type of design vocabulary that helps to speak to the residential scale that may be within that block face of Canal Street.
Yeah. I mean, it's handsome. I'm
Right.
not critiquing that. I'm just wondering if there's some, as we look for options in design as a board, right? We can't, if we see other opportunities for addressing your variance challenge, we'd like to see a little bit more thought into that before. Because I'm not sure that you can't design this to at least alleviate some of the concerns about the corner condition from a zoning standpoint. Just to be clear, y'all were asking for deferral, right?
Yep.
Okay.
They were. Might as well beat him up now, Rami. Just get him. No, just joking. The only thing I mentioned, just from looking at that side yard setback condition and back to architectural vocabulary with the, I mean, you're showing it almost as like a center hall concept on how, well, not center hall, but it's the 3-bay design. So once you start getting into pushing this back even further, do we lose that feature on the front facade, knowing that we're still protecting some level of transparency around it, at least the visibility around that corner?
Well, I guess my point about the HDLC is that if they were looking at this, they might push you to like really address
back.
the side street
Right.
and or whatever would be the main street really is Canal Street. I'm sorry, Carrollton, and address it more and kind of play with the shape of the building and not do something. I mean, this could have been on a rectangular lot in the garden district, right?
Right.
It's not, doesn't look like it's designed for this site.
And I can literally move the entire footprint of the building back without, like, not reducing the building length, but just pulling it all the way back is what I was referring to.
Does that reduce the overall leasable square foot on this building? Or,
No,
you know,
no. And I can push it closer to the adjacent building to another 2 feet, 2.5 feet maybe, and just fire rate the wall because we don't have any interior lot lines. So I don't have a minimum setback. The minimum setback is going to be governed by the building codes and the type of construction. We want to frame this whole thing out of wood.
Okay.
So
it sounds like deferral would be good.
Yeah. Yep.
You look at the design a little bit. Maybe
They're coming from that back parking lot anyway for access. So I mean, they got a whole bunch of things that he could really play with when he comes back. Yep. All right, there's a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion in regards to 5822. I move to defer. Well, how many days are we deferring these days? Just 30 days?
Just say
or
1 month.
1 month, yeah.
Second.
You had a question?
No, but thank you for your input.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Diaz and a second by Commissioner Gonzalez to defer BZA docket number 058-22 for 1 month. Please vote your screens. And that motion is passed. Thank you. Next item.
The next item is BZA docket 059-22 for a property located at 3815 Camp Street. This request is for a variance from the provisions of Article 21, Section 21.6 T1 to permit mechanical equipment with insufficient setback. The Department of Safety and Permits determined as part of its zoning review that the subject proposal is not compliant with Article 21, Section 21.6 T1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, which restricts the location of ground-based mechanical equipment to the rear or interior side yard. The applicant is seeking a variance to permit 2 feet 8-inch setback to allow for mechanical pool equipment located under the 3 feet setback minimum. The staff believes that the requested waiver of Article 21, Section 21.6 T1 mechanical equipment setback fails to meet 6 of the 9 criteria to allow a waiver of 2 feet 8 inches and fails standards 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 of the standards for variance for Article 4, Section 4.6 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, and that 1, there are no special circumstances which are peculiar to the land. 2, literal interpretation of the ordinance will not deprave the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district. 3, the special circumstances were caused by the applicant. 4, the variance will confer on the applicant special privileges. 6, the property regulations will not result in a demonstrable hardship. 7, the change is exclusively for the convenience and profit of the owner. Therefore, the staff recommends denial of the requested variance from Article 21, Section 21.6 T1 mechanical equipment.
Okay, is the applicant present for BZA docket number 058-22? Oh, I'm sorry, 59-22.
Hi, I'm Laura Goodson, 225 Ridgewood Drive, Metairie, Louisiana. I'd like to address the items in the report that were indicated not met. The first one being about special circumstances. Obviously, this home predates current setback requirements. I would consider that a special circumstance. The literal interpretation of the ordinance will not deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by others. On page 6 of the report is an example of a conforming mechanical equipment location. Upon further, and this is a very similar, the one that was cited as an example, I have it here printed out. It's a very similar situation and where the right side of the property has limited access because it was built prior to current setback standards. And the left side is where you would access the lot in the case of an emergency, in the case of access. So that example, they have their pool equipment in the right side setback. So if that's considered, an acceptable comparable, we'd like that to be considered. The third item, special circumstances, were not caused by the applicant because it was built prior to current setback standards. Variances will confer on the applicant's special privileges. It should not be considered a special privilege because in addition to the one example, I was able to find at least 3 others in the vicinity that also do not comply. So we're just looking at, previous acceptances and what we're asking for. Demonstrable hardship. The demonstrable hardship would be an access issue. To preserve the access to this lot in case of emergency or fire to this house or possibly neighbors, we'd like to preserve the left side and not place the pool equipment that would hinder that. That leaves the right side as being the most, the best placement for it. And number 7, regarding the profit of the owner, it's commonly known that putting in a pool doesn't increase your property value. I don't think the placement of the pool equipment affects the property value. It's about getting it in the right, the best location. The report also mentioned locating it in the rear right side, which would be a great alternative, but we would also need a variance in that location. I'm asking you not to consider locating it in the left side because of access issue. The report also mentioned paving, or the pavers that are shown. Those are proposed pervious paver. They have not been installed yet, but it is part of the landscaping that would allow, it would be not an impervious surface. Just wanted to note that since it was in the report. I appreciate this very diligent report and welcome any questions.
Be nice if I had the mic on. Thank you for your comment. Anybody else here to speak in support of this request? Anyone here to speak in opposition? Questions from the board? Just one quick question to, I know you just sat back down. I'm sorry. I had a quick question for you. With regards to the proposed, is this equipment already there or this is to be installed?
To be installed.
Okay, question. Regarding the layout and how this is all configured, is there not an opportunity to locate it? Looking at what's up on the screen right now, to the upper left-hand side or to the lower left-hand side, adjacent to the pool? And maybe potentially screen it in a certain type of way that it could still.
It was previously proposed in the upper right-hand side and denied because of its proximity to the pool. So I do believe we need the side setback variance in that location.
Denied by who?
Plan reviewer.
That doesn't make sense.
I think we would still need the 3-foot variance or to put it in within 3 feet of the side yard in that location in the upper right.
So I'm not saying, all right, I'm not saying where you have your landscaping.
Okay.
See how you have the pavers coming up next to the pool?
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was denied by electrical because there has to be, I'm told, 10 feet to the water's edge.
From the equipment?
Yeah, for the equipment.
I don't know if it's 10 feet from water's edge. That sounds a bit much. I think that may be to your breaker, not necessarily to the equipment.
I think almost any location on the right side or the left side will require variance. I'm not trying, I'd like to not put it on the left side to preserve access.
So let's just be clear on the difference between a variance that comes before us and something that you got to deal with safety and permits about.
Correct.
So what we're looking at is just the buildable area of the site and where the pool, where this equipment is relative to the boundary of the site.
Right.
You got all kinds of space between that. And you
Yeah.
have to change the shape of the pool or change the design of or put it closer to the building or, do something that might not be your preferred option in terms of design currently the way this is laid out.
The pool
So-
is currently in, the equipment is not.
Now, the pool's already there.
Yes.
Okay, so then you would have to put it in front of the porch somehow, it would have to just,
She's saying the pool, but is all these pavers in place already? All of that
No,
work is
sir.
done?
No, the
Okay.
pavers are not in place.
so you could put it along, there might be, I don't know what the rule, I don't.
Yeah, I don't
know what the rules are.
either.
But there's lots of room there along below where those trees are, and there may be a distance or some sort of rule about getting around a pool. I don't know what those are. So, but in terms of the zoning and that whole comment about the convenience of the owner and profit, all that's not just about money. That's also that's about, it's because it looks nice, or it doesn't feel right to have it where you want. That's not something we can work with. I unfortunately see lots of options in this plan to put it in a place that it might need to be screened, but you can work it in. So it's I'm not sure if you want to go back and look at this again and try to settle some of those rules before because I'm going to be honest, I'm not inclined to. I can't see moving this. Right. I don't see how it meets the 9 criteria.
Can I add one thing? We're also intending an acoustic pool cover, such as something like this, to detract. I mean, I don't think it's going to impact a neighbor. Nobody's gonna be able to see it. Nobody's going to hear it. I'd like to not locate it in the center of the yard in order if, say, the fire department has to get to the neighbor's house behind or the neighbor house on the side. They need to get down the left side. I don't want to impede that at all.
Well, but I think that's the reason for the 3-foot thing,
Right. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
Well, so the right side has no 3-foot, so there is no access. So in the proposed examples that are complying in the report, page 6, their pool equipment is on the
question to staff. If you were to align, if the equipment were aligned to the face of the build, there's already the building. If I'm understanding the argument, the building is non-conforming along that side yard currently. The distance between the building and the property line, is that less than 3 feet?
Yes, right, it is. So yes, that would the minimum is 3 feet.
But so can the equipment align with the side of the house? Because
that would be under 3 feet.
I don't think the non-conforming extends to equipment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Unless it was part of the building
structure.
Right, it would have to be part of the porch.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm looking at, I think where you may be getting confused when I'm making a reference to the upper left-hand corner or to the lower left-hand corner, not true to the property line. They're still within the buildable area. I'm seeing an area where they're showing a series of paved stones that go back to the landscaping along that side. Why not consider, and I'm just saying, I know you're making this reference to 10 feet. I'm not going to comment on that because I'm not as clear on what the electrical requirements may be or not, but maybe consider entertaining a deferral to see just to make sure you get further clarity around what exactly is the setback requirements for certain components. If it is something that's electrical driven, that's one element, but I've seen and I know that people install pool equipment much closer to the pool itself than 10 feet. So I would need to see.
Applied for it.
Hear me out.
Denied.
I'm just trying to give you the suggestion to see if there's another way to see, because you may be able to come into compliance. I think part of the problem what I'm at least seeing, aesthetics is driving this conversation versus the function and understanding how zoning does have some requirements that do have a direct correlation to life safety. So hearing that part, and you're even talking about the enclosure component, right? That enclosure component could actually be an architectural feature to flank both sides of that pool in some capacity. So I'm just at least asking to maybe look, if you consider looking at to see if that location is that's an option within the setback area that's allowed.
Yeah. And the other thing to note, I mean, this equipment, I don't design pools, but my understanding is you can put that stuff in a closet too. So if there was a way to build something into the porch or into the along the side of the house that would be within the buildable area, there may be an option there. So just
could I ask about the setback on the right-hand side is currently, I believe it's about 16 inches, the existing house to the property line. Would that be an acceptable setback?
Well, I was saying it would have to be part of the structure of the house.
Yeah, we can't extend, if I understand correctly from staff, we can't extend a non-conforming setback to accessory structures, that it can only be to the existing building structure. So
Couldn't an
remember, you're
accessory
talking about equipment versus the building itself.
Yeah, but couldn't an accessory structure in this zoning actually be a 0 lot line?
Staff.
I mean, the question is about the ground-based equipment, so it's not about the structure.
Accessory
itself.
structures, correct. Which could also have a fire, with an accessory structure, you could build it with fire separations and things of that nature. With equipment, you don't have that same type of application. So we can't grade the area between, we can't blur the line between accessory structures or the primary building to equipment. It's three different categories.
What if you were telling me the equipment could be in an accessory structure inside of a shed?
It can be inside the building, yeah.
Yeah.
But then that means you have to modify your design. I'm at least looking at it from the standpoint of something I think that's less invasive. And actually can be a design feature that works with your pool that actually vanishes to that corner. It may actually save you some money because you're now running less distance plumbing to your equipment from the pool. So we're just trying to give you, look, I understand you have a plan, your mind is set on the plan that's in front of you right now versus.
Well, our first plan was similar to your plan and it was denied, so.
Well, no,
I'm very-
it wasn't, because if I understood correctly, it was still within the required setback area where you're showing landscaping. Where I'm suggesting is that it's inside the area that's showing the pavers. Still setback from the property line.
Yeah, that is-
meeting it.
yeah, we met the 3-foot setback, is how it was originally submitted. The original pool application was in the upper right-hand side, 3 feet away from the rear and 3 feet away from the side, and it was denied. So that's why I'm hesitant to defer this, because we've waited this long to.
So was it denied by the Board of Zoning Adjustments or like by the city planning folks, or was it designed by safety and permits?
Safety and permits, I believe. I'd have to
There-
double
there
check
may be-
that.
I mean, I don't know I mean, that's not us. So I think what we're looking at is
Okay.
the buildable area of the site, and there's lots of locations to put this within that buildable area. And so we either need to defer it or deny it.
Yeah. And I don't
Okay.
see any reference to it.
I'll go
Hold
back
up.
and look at that if we do the deferral. It was with I believe, the original pool submittal.
I did find the original swimming pool permit in our system, and there's a comment from the Department of Safety and Permits noting the 3-foot setback requirement for the mechanical equipment. However, it's marked as resolved. So either the plans were modified to remove the mechanical equipment, or the plans are modified to show it in some other compliant location.
Did you see anything about the 10-foot on the original pool application?
There are no comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we've articulated some examples of how this may be able to come into compliance. Not trying to drive the ship of what's next. Suggestion I'll just make to you is consider the deferral so you can go make sure that you're getting a clear understanding of what the limitation was. Because the 10-foot rule doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, and the other reason to do that, I mean, you may not need to come back because you
Correct.
may resolve it in the design and it's a moot point. So.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion, if the motion's in order.
Yes, sir.
For, I don't even know where are we these days?
59.
Sorry, 5922. I move to defer for 30 days.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Diaz, seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez to defer BCA docket number 059-22 for 1 month. Please vote your screens. And that motion has passed. Next item.
Cameron.
Good afternoon. The next item is BZA 60-22 for 302 Wallace Drive. This is a waiver request for insufficient lot area as a part of a tentative approval granted by the CPC in July for a subdivision of two lots, lots 2 and 3, located at 303 Warrington Drive and 302 Wallace Drive into lots 2A and B1. The subject properties are located in an SRS single-family residential district in which the majority of the surrounding properties are considered legal non-conforming, meaning that the lot area is less than 6,000 square feet as outlined by the CZO. So the subdivision would take the two pre-existing legal non-conforming lots and convert one of them into a compliant lot for lot area, but push another into further non-compliance. The owner has placed a fence as an unofficial lot line in the rear post-Katrina and now intends to sell the property but keep the unofficial lot lines. Staff believes that the requested variance of Article 13, Section 13, 13.3.8.1 fails to meet criteria 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Therefore, we are recommending denial.
Here's the applicant present for BZA docket number 060-20.
Thank you for hearing me today. My name is Joanne Bagneris LaFonta. I own the property at 303 303 Warrington Drive since 1969. My husband is 80 years old, I'm 78. And I say that because being older, it presents a problem when you have to make changes. I built when Katrina happened, we lost everything, the house and everything. We lived on a trailer. And the lady who was living behind me, she became very elderly and she wanted to sell her property. So I bought the property directly behind me with the intention that because my children were so scattered at the time, teenagers and whatever, I bought the property with the intention of putting my daughter into that property. So when I built the fence, I built it with an open gate to the fence because I wanted to be accessible to get to my daughter if necessary. What I didn't know is that my daughter became very ill. She had a lung disease and she had to move everything that she had into my property at Warrington Drive. She lived with me for nearly 4 years. And although I was trying to wait until maybe she'd get well enough to be able to move back there, it didn't happen. My daughter died this past year, and I was not able to move her into that property at all. So I ask y'all to give me the permission to just go ahead and leave the fence where it is and be able not have to go through the expense of having to move a fence, put another fence up just to enlarge the property at Wallace Drive. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. I'm sorry, I'm very emotional, but my daughter's loss has meant the world to me. And all of my plans for what I had for her to move into that house or for one of my other children to move there, it just didn't work out. So that's why I'm here today, to ask you to please allow me to do this. You have any questions?
All right, thank you, Ms. McNair. Just make sure we take, I know it's just pretty much just you here. Let's make sure we go through the public comments real quick first, okay?
I'm sorry, go to
No, that's
what?
fine. No,
I
that's
didn't
fine.
hear you.
We have to make sure let me make sure we get through public comment portion first. And
Absolutely.
if anybody has a question for you,
Yes,
they'll be able to ask you a question.
Absolutely, okay.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in support of the request for BZA docket number 060-20? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this request? Seeing and hearing none, is there any questions from the board? Just hold tight 1 second. I know that everybody's still trying to look through the report right now. So
No,
just
no,
bear with
no,
us.
I'm okay.
Quick question to staff, just for, I want to, a bit confused, so I thought I'd ask the question. Thought I'd ask the question. As the applicant mentioned the fence in the rear yard. So, the fence is where the fence is, but that's not necessarily the lot line. And the request is to build in a lot area that has 6,000 square feet required. And we're proposed at 4,431 square feet. So just to be clear, that 4,431 is the actual lot area and not where the fence falls, correct?
The-
To look at. Sorry.
The application, sorry. The application is to keep the existing fence that's an unofficial lot line through a subdivision that would then make it the permanent lot line.
Oh, I see.
So that survey would show the new lot line in which 2A would be 6,444 square feet, which is well into conformance with the CZO, but lot B1, which is 302 Wallace Drive, would drop down from 5,250 square feet to 4,431 square feet.
So if you look at the neighborhood pattern on some of those maps, the line goes kind of straight through the whole block, and this would be one lot. I think what's interesting to me about this one is that none of the lots in this area are conforming currently.
That is correct.
Right.
But it would put one of them, outside use.
But it would put one in compliance.
In compliance, yeah.
Ooh, yeah, right. Okay.
I also don't know if I mentioned, but because it received tentative approval, this is one of the provisos, is to get this waiver request from the BZA. Therefore, if you approve or deny, it impacts whether the subdivision is complete.
That's in the area, right?
So just a quick one, like you've already stated, one would fall into compliance. So no matter what happens, it's either with the preservation of two non-conforming lots or the creation of a singular conforming lot with one that's still as self-sufficient, but still falls within some of the general development pattern within the area. I mean, it's not matching the existing lot conditions next to it, but it was just kind of, I'm looking at it from a, no, that wasn't directed at you. I'm sorry, Ron.
No, I thought it's because you knew that I had a weird backyard that didn't
I don't know what you're
Had a
talking
strange,
about. I don't know what you're talking
I live in a property with odd lot lines, so I mean, there's many reasons and stories in the history of the city.
We're in a city full of.
Weird lot lines, yeah.
Can I also make another comment about the lot getting pushed further into non-compliance? There is a small number of lots that are actually smaller in square footage than what is being proposed. So it wouldn't be terribly out of character for that area, as there are lots that are 4,000 or less.
We're not setting some incredible precedent if the waiver was granted.
Correct. Like there are lots in the immediate area that are 4,000 square feet, if not smaller than what's being proposed.
Yeah. All right. If Brother Chair, if motion's in order.
If you have one, please proceed.
In regards to docket BZA 060-22, I move for approval of the requested of the applicant's request of Article 13, Section 13(3)(a)(1), referencing more the well-written letter attached to the application, in addition to the applicant's oral arguments, finding that she has met all 9 criteria. And so I move for approval with the 3 noted provisos.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. A motion by Commissioner Gonzalez, seconded by Commissioner Eggins for BZA docket number 060-22, granting the request for waiver of Article 13, Section 13.3.8.1, Table 13.2 for lot area. Taking the letter that was provided by the applicant, as well as the discussion at the dais to grant the waiver request, fulfilling the 9 criteria with the 3 noted provisos, or 3 standard provisos. Please vote your screen. And that motion has passed. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Next item.
Okay, thank you. BZA docket 061-22 relative to the property at 5900 Laurel Street is the request for a variance from the provisions of Article 22, Section 2211B1 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to permit a single-family residence with more than 1 curb cut. The applicant is proposing 2 curb cuts, thus necessitating a waiver. The staff has requested the applicant make revisions to the site plan, which would allow for a proper review of the application. Therefore, the staff recommends deferring this item to the October 3rd meeting.
Okay, as an applicant present for BZA docket number 061-22.
They were here, they had to leave, but they are
They did
okay
have-
with the deferral.
Okay, thank you. Anyone here to speak on this docket item in support or in opposition? Okay, hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Regarding docket number BZA 61-22, move to defer the matter for 1 month.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Rufo and a second by Commissioner Gonzalez to defer BZA docket number 061-22 for 1 month. Please vote your screens. And that motion is passed. Next item.
Thank you. We will now begin with a new business for reasonable accommodation appeals. Will the vice chair please read the rules for reasonable accommodation appeals?
All right, rules and procedures for a public hearing for appeals of a reasonable accommodation decision of the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission. The following procedures shall be observed during the appeal hearing. Each speaker shall give his or her name and address prior to speaking on the proposal. The Executive Director of City Planning Commission shall present to the board the decision which is under appeal, the relevant code section or sections relating to the appeal, and any information explaining the department's decision. The applicant or representative will speak next. The representative shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each applicant or representative speaker, but in no event shall the cumulative presentation total by the applicant or their representative exceed 15 minutes. The applicant or representative will speak next. The presentation shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each application or representative speaker, but in no event shall the cumulative presentation total by applicants or their representative exceed 15 minutes. Proponents or persons in favor of the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker. Opponents or persons in opposition to the proposal will speak next and be allowed 3 minutes per speaker as well. The applicant or representative will be allowed a rebuttal. The rebuttal will be limited to a cumulative maximum of 5 minutes. Additional information. For any exceptional case, the time limitation may be extended by the presiding officer with the approval of the board. As the board deems necessary, the case may be acted upon at this meeting or deferred for additional information or review. If the case is deferred, it will be acted upon at a subsequent meeting as required by law. All proper parliamentary procedures shall be followed, including recognition of speakers, relevance of argument, and absolute prohibition of applause or demonstration. Standard for review. In considering any appeal of a decision of the Executive Director, the Board of Zoning Adjustment shall consider the application's request a reasonable accommodation, B, the Executive Director's decision, C, the applicant's written statement of the grounds for appeal, and D, the provision of this article in order to determine whether the Executive Director's decision was consistent with applicable fair housing laws and the required findings established in Article 27, Section 27.5 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance.
Thank you. Reasonable accommodation docket 00222 relative to the property at 5621 St Roch Avenue is an appeal of the decision of the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission as per Article 27, Section 27.7 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance regarding the partial denial of a reasonable accommodation from the provisions of Article 22, Section 2211D3 to permit a parking pad with insufficient setback and relief from proviso number 2, requiring modification of the petition parking pad to measure at least 3 feet from the side lot line on the Mendez Street side and at least 8.5 feet in width. This is an after-the-fact request, and representing the Executive Director, Ms. Hernandez will be presenting.
Thank you. Again, I'm Emily Ramirez Hernandez. I'm the Planning Administrator for the Board of Zoning Adjustments. I'll be representing our Executive Director, Bob Rivers, in this appeal. Regarding this appeal, on July 1st, our department issued our decision for a partial approval and a partial denial of this reasonable accommodation request. As part of the request, the applicant requested to provide parking in the front yard, as well as 2 curb cuts where only 1 curb cut is permitted, and a parking pad setback of 0 feet where 3 feet is required. As part of our approval, we approved all of the requests with the exception of Article 2211D3, which is for parking pad location as far as the setback. So our department approved the parking pad in the front yard as well as the second curb cut. However, we denied the request to have the parking pad located only 0 feet from the side lot line. The proviso number 2, this request was granted with 3 provisos for the remaining requests. And proviso 2 requires that the applicant bring the parking pad into compliance. And as part of that proviso, we are requesting that there is a modification to the existing parking pad. This was an after the fact request. And so a portion of the concrete would need to be demoed along the side property line so that there is at least a 3-foot offset. In doing that, it would reduce the parking pad width to below 8.5 feet, which is the minimum required. And so an additional modification would need to be made in order to increase it to 8.5 feet going in the other direction. And the applicant has appealed that, citing specifically this proviso. And that is essentially all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is the applicant present for this item? I see. All right. All right, you have-
Joycelyn Hayes.
If you don't mind, if you want to bring the mic down to you, so I just want to make sure that we're able to hear you
Okay.
clearly. And if you could just give your name and address for the record, and you have
Okay.
5 minutes.
It's Joycelyn Hayes, 4056 Clematis Street in New Orleans. That 3 feet that you all are speaking about would eliminate me for a driveway altogether. The streets there are very, very narrow on St. Roch, and no one really parks on the street. Coming from Gentilly, going about 8 blocks down to the house at St. Roch, not one car is parked on the streets. Everybody has driveways. The mailman has a problem with it when parking in front of the mailbox. Sanitation has a problem with it because they would have to go around some of the cars if it was a car parked there to empty garbage cans. The neighbor next door to me has a driveway with 4 cars on it completely, and the property line serves as a the concrete serves as a property line on the Mendez side. From his house all the way to the street is paved, and that's the property line, the paved driveway. If I cut 3 feet from the Mendez side, which is that paved driveway on his side, I don't have a driveway. It's no driveway at all, because a car wouldn't be able to fit. My tenant was there in the wheelchair in the street. He tilted over because he couldn't come up the ramp. It was too difficult for him to pull up a ramp, pull his wheelchair over a ramp. So he ended up on the ground in his wheelchair, which was difficult for him to get back into the street. A driveway is extremely needed there. It's a single driveway, one little driveway, and it's not that wide. It's only for 1 car. I would like to maintain that little 1 driveway for anyone that's living in the house there, so they won't have any problems parking in the street, getting in and out, and especially for a handicapped person. I presented a picture of the driveway as along with the vehicle, if it had one parked in there, and you would be able to see that a car couldn't fit if 3 feet was taken away. So I have this picture right here indicating that 3 feet, if it's cut, is no driveway at all. I really need to have the driveway as is for anybody that living in the house. So it would be able to accommodate anybody there. And I guess that would be it, because it's just, like I said, everybody in the neighborhood have a driveway. And in my tenant, the man next door has a complete front yard paved with 4 cars. And his concrete driveway serves as a property line. So that's
Okay.
about it.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else here to speak in support of this request?
My name is Denise Lewis. I am the
If you could state your name again,
My name is Denise Lewis. I'm the owner of 5617 St. Roch, which next door to her property. I have pictures of what she's talking about. There is no one in a wheelchair, for number one. It's Section 8 house that she's renting out. The tenants, they have no respect for me living as a homeowner in there. Ms. Haynes do not live in that area. I have photos. I have been calling the city. I done spoke with Tammy. I spoke with Mr. Huff. I done spoke with Ms. Robley. She asked me to send pictures in. I did everything I can do. I have pictures of her tenants who's parked in the driveway, who lives in a residence. They're driving on the grass. They don't even need a driveway, which they have a driveway on the opposite side. If you come from Fillmore down St. Roch, it's one driveway per yard, per home, should I say. She have a driveway.
So, all right, so one thing we're gonna do, just to kind of
pictures.
keep this within the confines of how we're supposed to,
Yes,
so
I
if you don't
submit-
mind,
I submit several pictures, I'm sorry.
so just real quick, just from a point of housekeeping, I'll make sure we went through the rules beforehand.
Mhm.
I want to make sure we're staying pertinent to what we're actually dealing with this, which is the review of the reasonable accommodation requests. I don't
Mhm.
want it to make it about a back and forth between
Yes.
neighbors in any capacity, please.
And that's what I'm.
The nature of tenants, it's not really pertinent to the conversation. I want to keep it purely to the question that we have before us, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, correct.
Thank you. Proceed with your comments.
I was saying I have photos of the driveway where she want to leave there. We don't have 4 cars. It's me and my husband. It's 2 cars. We don't have 4. We got a gate. My husband came down here to see if we needed to put a fence up, to get a permit to put a fence up. We were told no. We put the fence up, and I have photos of where the fence up, and the people who she's renting a home to have parties every month, should I say.
Okay, but again, I'm
And I'm
gonna
sorry, I'm sorry,
ask you
I'm
to keep
sorry,
it
I'm sorry.
relevant.
I'm
We got,
sorry. I'm
you're not
sorry, that's
helping,
irrelevant.
you're not helping us right now.
But with the photos I have, far as the driveway concerned, they're pulling the makeshift driveway. When I get ready to leave out my yard, the driveway is so close, I would have to turn the opposite way to go down St. Roch and go down to Mendez to get out. Or I would have to hit the neutral ground, back up and turn out again. I have a SUV. I don't have a little small car. So they're parking right at the end of my gate, right at the end of the property line of my driveway. So when I'm leaving out my yard, if I come out my driveway, if I to turn right, I have to back up, pull up, back up. I have asked them several times, the neighbors next door, I asked them several times, excuse me, can you pull up your car, blah, blah, blah. I said, y'all blocking the driveway. They have attitudes with me. It's too much crime going on. And that's what made me report this for number 1 with the driveway. That's the problem I'm having.
All right, your time is expired on this one. Anyone else here to speak in support? And I call for, people in support of this request. Anybody else here to speak on this docket item? I've not seen anybody. Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to make sure we go through proper protocol. Anyone else here to speak in opposition to this? Okay, ma'am, do you have an opportunity for a rebuttal?
Yes, I have a picture here where it's a single driveway that's really needed. And everybody on that street has a driveway. They have about 4 cars can go on their driveway.
I want to keep the conversation pertinent to
Okay.
your property and what we're dealing with from the
Okay.
accommodation, because, ma'am, one thing I want to make sure you understand. We're facing this is not a debate about between 2 different driveway
Got
types or who has what. I want to stay pertinent to a reasonable accommodation request and why you feel as if though your application was overturned. So I just want to make sure we're crafting.
Okay, I've been talking to Valerie McMillan. She was supposed to be here today.
She's upstairs right now, but
I guess,
But-
well, she was supposed to come down for me. The car that we have in the driveway is would be a single car, just one, and come in and out with no problems. They put up a fence well, a fence has been put up from the house all the way to the end of the walkway there, separating the two properties. Plus the concrete driveway on their side is also serving as a property line on the Mendez side. A driveway is extremely needed. Nobody gives anybody any trouble there. The tenants are extremely polite, very polite, and one of them is ill. So I don't know what she's talking about.
Okay. Well, this is not the forum for it. Please, if you could just please keep your
Yes.
comments to quiet, please.
That's that person over
Just
there.
Stop. All right. Does that conclude your comments, ma'am?
Let's see. Like I said, everybody's been complaining. The mill man complains about parking in front of the mill. The garbage man complains about having to go around any cars to park the empty cans. And my tenant is ill. I have submitted paperwork to that effect too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any question from the board? Feel free.
It's a reasonable accommodation question.
All right, this is a
So-
reasonable accommodation.
So the reasonable accommodation is for the particular tenant or particular person. So if that person moves out or it goes to somebody or it doesn't stay with the building forever, is that right?
That is correct. Reasonable accommodations that are approved do not run with the land. It is not an entitlement like a variance is an entitlement and runs with the land. Reasonable accommodations, and there's a proviso number 3 in here. Those are restricted to the individual with the disability that is on the application. So in this case, it is the current tenant of the property. The driveway should not be used by anyone else. And if that person were to move out, then the driveway would either need to be removed entirely or obtain a waiver through the normal variance process.
Okay, and the applicant understands that. Do you understand that this is only for the tenant? And if the tenant moves out, the driveway needs to come out.
The driveway.
So
gets ripped out.
I know you're sitting down if you don't mind. I just want to make sure that it's on record that you're in agreement with what was just discussed.
Yes, we spoke about.
Speak to the
Bella
mic,
and I.
to the mic. Speak to the mic.
Bella and I have spoke about it. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Because when I look at the physical character of that parking lot, to make it be 3 feet away or whatever, it would need to
be wider.
Saw cut. And then where the path is, you need to infill with concrete. So do you understand? So if you've got a sidewalk right now that goes from the door to the sidewalk, like a little path that's
Yes.
next to the driveway.
Yes.
So what I think this city is saying is that you should move the concrete over. Am I understanding this? That the concrete needs to shift over.
Correct.
So that
It'll
the
be on
drive-
top, it'll be on top the sidewalk.
Yeah, so the sidewalk would become
part of the
driveway. And then you would cut out the concrete along the fence. That's what the city is asking for. So it's not taking, I mean, it's the parking space would be the right size, but you would have to take out, you basically use that to drive on, right? Could it be used as a driving strip, right? I mean.
Parking
theoretically.
pad,
The sidewalk?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's, compliant with whatever the requirements are. It could be united with the rest of the driveway to form a full parking space.
Yeah.
But the sidewalk would go into the house itself, not into the doorway. It'll be facing the house if we extend it over some.
You don't have to extend the walkway. All the city is saying is that little bit of green strip that separates the walkway from your current driveway, you'd want to pave that with concrete and cut out 3 feet from where the fence is up with your
It's not
neighbor.
gonna be wide enough for a car.
Well, that's what's, in order for us to approve the reasonable accommodation that you're asking for, those 3 feet, somebody needs to come with that concrete saw and rip that up. They should have told you that before you poured it, but this is an after the fact accommodation. So now after the fact, we're talking about modifications that need to be made in order for us to give you what you're asking for. We want to make sure you understand what the city is asking for you to have done on your part for us to give you what you're asking for.
So let's
understand, but-
just one point of clarity. So what is actually before us? She's asking to preserve the parking pad as is currently installed.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's actually her request.
Yes.
The reasonable accommodation has already been reviewed with staff.
Okay.
And they're granting it, but what they're saying, in order for her to receive the reasonable accommodation, she needs to cut the 3-foot strip away from the property line and then pull, that gives her the ability to still fill in that space to make a compliant off-street parking stall, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I
And
just
I
want to make
think-
sure we're clear on what's actually being asked.
And from a physical standpoint, the thing that's more of an issue is the curb cut needs to be shifted over.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we don't have funds to do that. None whatsoever.
So we can't really look at this from the financial side of the equation.
Mhm.
What this is
But I
purely,
could, if you still, like you said, go over where the grass is for 3 feet on that side. The driveway will be going into the building.
so that
When you-
now,
when you park
here's what I'll
on-
tell you. Here's what to help answer that question for you. If you're making this into a compliant ADA parking stall, that's also in term, the way that would work is how you pull into that parking spot. If you're dealing with a van, if you pull straight into the driveway, the accessible side of a van would actually put you out on the right-hand side, which would allow you to still have access to what is that ramp condition that I've seen inside your images. If you're using a van, if they're using any other type of vehicle, and let's say the person with limited mobility is on the driver's side of that vehicle should back into that stall. And when they back into that parking stall, they can get out of the driver's side of the vehicle and then still walk on the path of that parking pad that still allows them to go through the ramp condition to get into the house. We're not telling you to pour a new sidewalk up to the face of the building. We're just, what their staff is recommending is at least providing a parking stall that shows a walkable path that still accesses it through the way that you have it currently configured. But the medium ground, in order for you to still have this parking stall in this spot, is to then come back, cut back the concrete 3 feet away from the property line, and then pave a new section of concrete to create a compliant parking stall.
What is the purpose for cutting 3 feet?
Stormwater runoff, as well as, I believe it's tied to stormwater runoff, and what are other requirements within this?
Because it's already have the concrete there on the very edge of Mendez, coming all the way down, separating the property
Okay,
from their driveway. So 3 feet from my side, and it's concrete on the other side.
But this is a second driveway. That's kind of a special request for someone who's handicapped. The other driveway has all of the setbacks put in correctly. So we're just trying to make this work.
I think she's referring to the neighbor.
yeah, and look, I'm gonna see, so I'm trying to avoid us going down that rabbit hole. That's a totally different case, and it's not a part of the reasonable accommodation discussion. Because trust me, if this was a different application, I'd have a whole lot
Yeah,
of comment for the neighbor.
Not talking about
All right,
anything with the
so yeah, just stay away from it.
Yeah.
So
It's
just
a
maybe
big-
a quick question to staff real quick to kind of help answer her question. What is the premise behind the 3-foot cutback?
I believe it's probably located or related to encroaching onto an adjacent property. So when you're opening your car door, it doesn't swing onto your neighbor's property. I don't know the full history for why that requirement is there. However, it is a requirement of residential parking pads.
Yeah, I could also see if a car is parked fully in, the fire department can't get through.
Can't get past that
alley.
vehicle.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a life safety as well as an accessibility, as well as even avoiding runoff to an adjacent property.
It took Commissioner James's recommendation The application that you share. has
But wouldn't that
photos
work on
from-
both sides of the fence?
the-
We're not gonna comment on your neighbor's property. We're strictly sticking to the application you have in front of us for the reasonable accommodation, which is purely about your parking pad as it's currently configured and how to bring it into some form of compliance in order to do it in order for us to truly review this as a reasonable accommodation request.
And you.
Otherwise, where this conversation has been going, or at least what you guys have been presenting from, it's treading down the wrong path. And it's almost making it nothing about the reason why reasonable accommodations exist. And it's making it more about a dispute between neighbors. That's not why we're having this
new at the
conversation.
property. I'm very new even in the neighborhood. I don't even know her.
So, doesn't matter, but I'm trying to stick to the point that's
I'm
in
just
front of
saying,
us.
I'm not coming into something and trying to make something out of something because I'm new at the whole thing. They've been on my property for 5 times. I never went on theirs 0 times. So
But the good thing is your tenant, who's the applicant, you've got
understand
multiple pictures of the vehicles being backed in, as
Yeah.
Commissioner James suggested. So it shouldn't be a problem for the backing in. That way that door could still swing open.
Mhm.
So thankfully they've got that down. So I think the backing in. Don't mention them backing in, the vehicles won't be a problem for the applicant.
But again, it's, the true question is purely back to her appeal, which is to allow the pad to remain, or sticking with the recommendation from the director, which is asking them to make the parking stall, reconfigure the parking stall so it meets the underlying zoning requirements for the parking pad, for residential parking pads. Because the question is purely about the parking pads location at this time.
If are there any, you want to ask any more questions? I'm ready to make more.
Yeah, if anybody has any other questions. Yeah. Any other questions from the board? What's the pleasure of the board?
Motions in order. In regards to RA 002-22, I move to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the executive director of the city planning, finding that the request fails to meet the 9 criteria. Fails to meet. See, let me find my number here. Fails to. Wait a minute, is Article 22, Section 22(8)(b)(1)?
So maybe.
2211(d)(3). Yeah. Article 22, Section 2211(d)(3). That's it.
So it's the 3, right?
Yep. Denial. Citing Article 22, Section 2211(d)(3).
I'll second that.
So just quickly to staff, I just want to make sure that we're correctly reflecting the criteria as they needed to be stated.
I'll read what Article 27 says as far as appeals. In considering an appeal of a decision of the executive director, the Board of Zoning Adjustment shall consider A, the application requesting a reasonable accommodation, B, the executive director's decision, C, the applicant's written statement of the grounds for appeal, and D, the provisions of this article in order to determine whether the executive director's decision was consistent with applicable fair housing laws and the required findings established in section 27.5.
Not just ask. What the?
I find that the executive director has found all of that. My first reasonable accommodation. Am I missing something, Emily?
I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
As long as you believe that the findings in the staff report are fair and consistent with the fair housing laws.
They are fair and consistent.
All right, so you're saying that it meets all five? Fails to meet the five of the five required findings?
Fails to meet the 5 required findings established by Article 27, Section 27.5 of the CZO.
Thank you. All right, so you're amending your motion?
I'm amending my motion to include the clean and well articulated language that I just spoke.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? The second is still,
Second.
okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to deny the reasonable accommodation appeal regarding BZA docket number RA 002-22. As Commissioner Gonzalez moved to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the directives of City Planning Commission, finding that the request fails to meet 5 of the 5 required findings as established in Article 27, Section 27.5 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Please vote your screens. And that motion is passed. All right, next item.
Okay, thank you. We will now begin with the unfinished business regarding any other matters. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of the election of officers annually at its first meeting on or after July 1st of each year.
Quick,
Board-
sorry, Valerie. I think we skipped the new business request for extension.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did. Okay. We will begin with the new business for extension requests. BZA docket 05319, relevant to the property at 12,000 Levy Drive, is a request for an extension of time previously granted for a previously granted variance pursuant to Article 4, Section 4.6.g.2 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to allow a 1-year extension. The applicant has requested a 30-day deferral.
Okay, Emily, I know we have this extension, so so what's next steps on this? And I'm sorry.
What's next?
What do we need to do on this item?
Well, the applicants wants to defer the matter just because if they're not here. but-
Okay.
Right. But- So I guess I was doing, there's no, we need to
All right,
formally ask
all
for
right,
public
yeah,
comment.
all right, so sorry. Anyone here to speak on this docket item? Seeing that nobody's in chambers right now. All right, seeing that the applicant is not present, is anyone here to speak in support of this request? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this request? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the board?
In regards to docket 5319, I move to defer whatever they requested. What did they request? 30 days? Except for extension. Yeah.
Second.
Please vote your screen. And that motion is passed. Ooh,
All right.
it's one of them days, man.
We will now begin with unfinished business regarding any other matters. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of the election of officers. Annually at the first meeting on or after July 1st of each year, the board shall elect from its members a chair and a vice chair as it shall deem necessary and proper. The chair and vice chair shall serve until June 30th of the following year or until their successors have been elected and qualified and may, if duly elected by the members, succeed themselves.
Okay, I know we keep going through this every month. We keep pushing it off because everybody's not here. And it's the one day the chairwoman isn't here. We constantly defer this thing and it's
Wait.
always been the same seats.
Here's my question.
Shoot. She's not here, so.
I mean, I know she's not here. I really want to make a motion that Candace Richards Forrest remains chair and Todd James remain vice chair. That would be my motion. Is there any, geez, I look shiny.
Shouldn't have put that camera on him. He wasn't ready for that one.
Is that what I look like? You want to,
As much as I'd like to second that, I do want to.
Be fair to her.
Yeah, fairness to the chair, the current chair.
Right.
We're putting her on the docket for.
Just
right of
serving her for another year.
kind of hoisting on her. She's not even.
All right. Yeah, she took vacation on purpose. No. All right, so does that at least maybe just, so much to Commissioner Rufo's point, just defer it maybe again one more month and hopefully we could all be in the same room?
All right, I'll move to defer it 1 month.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to defer election of officers, 1 additional month. Hopefully we'll have this all cleared up by then. Please vote your screens. And that motion has passed as well. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Gonzalez. He wasn't quick enough on the mic trigger for that one, and a second by Commissioner Diaz to adjourn. All those in favor? Just aye.
Aye.
And that motion has passed, and see you guys next month.